Hello, all you various forms of people. This is episode 104 of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast known as Look Out, Sir. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where I introduce my good buddy Phil. How's it going, Philip?
I'm a bit stressed at the moment. It's yeah, I mean, obviously listeners to last week would know I got a last minute invite to No Retreat, and this week coming I'm going to the LGT doubles list, so I'm finishing
the LGT doubles list, Phil.
sorry, well, God, my brain's not even working. It's the LGT doubles event.
Yes,
as part of the London Grand Tournament. It's so grand, they've only, I think, managed to sell half the doubles tickets that were available.
Oh, really?
Well, according to BCP, which is obviously the Best Coast Pairings app that they're using, I think in terms of the army lists that have been submitted past the deadline, I think there's like 42 armies. And by armies, that's doubles, that's pairings. So I guess there's about 84 people in total. And I think there's like 56 tickets still available, it said. So
well, maybe me and Joe should have jumped on at the last moment there.
I mean, give it a go, see if you still can.
Nah, it's all right. I think I'm going to a gig Friday night now at this rate, but maybe not. Who knows? I should go along, really. Support you and Richie, my boys. Look at you from afar and, I don't know, get your juices or whatever it is that you require.
Oh, you can be our official ball boys.
Water boy would have been the terminology I was assuming. The ball boy would be there. Admittedly, Richie could do with a ball boy because, the way he kind of approaches the game and his flailing ability to destroy everything around him, he would need someone to pick up the pieces as they fall free of the board, as it were. You got to be careful, Phil. Don't let him put his greasy mitts on anything. He'll smash it up.
No, I know. There'd be a 2-meter cordon around all my models.
Exactly. There's a good, got to maintain that 2-inch safety net around everything. Definitely don't want to get into that engagement range. Anyway, on the topic of engagement ranges, and not really on the topic of anything at all, what are we talking about in this week's podcast, Phil?
Well, we're doing one of those classic episodes, and I'm saying it's a classic episode because we've done it twice. I think this will be the third time we've done it. It's a White Dwarf Index Astartes episode.
Ooh, I quite like those, despite the fact that I didn't think I would originally.
They are pretty good. This time we're doing Wolfspear, the Ultima founding Space Wolves, that's it, chapter that are all Primaris.
There we go. The Wolves, Fenrica, or whatever they're called. I can't remember what the actual old school terminology was to describe the Space Wolves, because I understand the Space Wolves were like their kind of funny name, but not their real Fenrisian name. But anyway, I know I've already forgotten all of that stuff. And we're doing more than that, though, aren't we, Phil? We're also going to be talking about what?
Well, we've been spoiled. We did some of Gen Con previews last week, but there was more. So we'll be talking about that, specifically Black Templars, and if there is a bit of time, the Necromunda models as well, because that is 40k adjacent. So let's cram it in there while we can. The Blood Bowl stuff, the Warcry stuff, we're ignoring. That isn't for this podcast.
Although I will say the most unimpressive Blood Bowl team of recent note.
What? I quite like it. It's a much.
We saw the same Blood Bowl team, right? The Cornate Warrior.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty good.
No.
I mean, because they
compare that to the undead team with the werewolves and stuff. Nowhere close.
I hate the undead team. It's so American Halloween-y. It's just too.
Love it.
It's too tropey for me to like it. It's not enough Warhammer fantasy.
It's got the comedy ghost that's a sheet. I mean, how could you not love that?
It's a bit too far in the silly direction. Whereas this is like straight out of like fantasy, like conversion potentials for them.
There we go.
Fantasy or even 40k would be pretty high because they look a bit more grim dark aesthetics, unlike some of the other sort of chaos teams that they've done in the past, which looked a bit more cartoony. I thought
I
this
don't know. I
one.
think all their chaos teams have been pretty. Yeah, even the Nurgle team. I mean, the
Oh,
Nurgle
the
team had
Nurgle
some.
one's like the best chaos team, I would say.
Yeah, well, they've got the Nurgle one. They've got the Chaos Warrior one, which looks pretty strong as well. And
I
then
don't think. I think that was the one I didn't like because that was too
they were
much
all
like
just
a.
big muscly dudes.
Well, exactly. It's
Brrr.
too much like an American football team, whereas the new Khorne Berserkers are much more. They're like a chaos warband first and foremost that just so happen to like kicking a ball around, as opposed to being a proper football team first and foremost. Like
Blood Bowl team.
Blood Bowl team, sorry, yes. If
Yeah,
you've
it's all
got your little barometer, they are firmly affixed to the we like to fight stuff and be chaosy, as opposed to the we like to chase around a pig's bladder.
There we go. That very popular barometer, or sliding scale that people use for almost all things, much like a 5-star review.
Come on now, Timmy. You've got your orders. You've got to do it.
But I don't want to, sir.
You've got your orders. Now get up there, get over that trench, and get me that 5-star review, and get it back here right away.
Okay, sir.
This week's 5-star review comes from where? Phil.
Oh, let's just say the UK.
But where in the UK?
Apple Podcasts
Of Great Britain.
Of Great Britain. The Britons.
Sadly not, sir. Sadly not. Today's podcast review comes from way of Apple Podcasts of Australia. The land down under, Phil.
Half right.
There you go. What was the creatures that went to the land down under in an old Disney film back in the day? Forgetting now. It was like the sequel to a thing. There were two little mice rode around on an albatross.
No, they went to America.
Oh, did they?
I think that was called. No, not Coming to America, because that was an Eddie Murphy movie.
Are you not getting confused with Pfeiffer? Pfeiffer went to America.
Yeah, is that who you're not talking about?
No, it's the Rescuers. That's what they were called. The Rescuers Down Under.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
I don't remember that.
Anyway, well, fair enough. Fair enough. Anyway, this week's 5-star review comes by way of Danny842003. And obviously from Apple Podcasts of Australia. And it reads, "We all hate Joe, 5 stars." As is, of
Really?
course. It does, yeah. That is the opening statement. We all hate Joe, 5 stars. I feel like this came from that era of time where we were especially really, ramming home that "damn you, Joe" messaging that we were doing back in the day. But you never know, Joe might actually start doing guest appearances again here and there. We'll get him on for the odd quiz, won't we, Phil?
Yeah, I think we've given him enough time out of the naughty corner, but we're letting back in every so often.
Exactly. But anyway, we all hate Joe, 5 stars. I had to give this podcast a review as they're always slagging off some guy called Joe. Well, there you go. Okay. I don't feel like we've always been slagging off some guy called Joe. We've just been kind of acknowledging his existence and his relative absence. I suppose we've been going through the stages of mourning throughout the year with the loss of Joe. At first there was this kind of, guarded sense of pride and enthusiasm for his, new endeavors. And over time there was this creeping sense of jealousy and frustration. And now we're just at this sort of broad sense of acceptance, I suppose.
You mean the bit where we're like, we don't need you or want you, Joe?
Exactly. He was only ever, negatively contributing, at least to the length of things. I always find him extraordinarily funny, though, Phil. I have to be honest with you. I can't help but laugh at the man.
Well, that's true. But at him, not with him.
With him, at him, around him. He is a jolly boy. But there we go. Anyway, everyone knows a Joe. And that, everyone knows a Joe that needs slagging off, apparently. There you go.
True.
And that's the full extent of that 5-star review. Short and to the point. So obviously, Danny842003, thank you for that 5-star review and your, condemnation. That's the word I couldn't find for a moment there, of Joe. And to elaborate on that further, here's Phil.
Well, thanks very much for joining us in our hatred and utter dismay, despair, belittlement
Disdain?
of disdain. Yep. Put your Joe as alongside our Joe, because you clearly have one. Everyone has a Joe. Put them at the bottom of your heel and stamp them thoroughly into the ground. Metaphorically, of course. We're not
Of course.
people of actual violence.
No, we're not advocating that anyone do harm to
be,
anyone.
Be mean with words, not with fists.
I mean, to be
guess.
fair, maybe not even do that, to be honest.
I mean, I don't feel like I should be condoning the use of bullying, because that's not what we're about.
No,
of course.
no.
It's all taken in good humour. Joe, we gave it to him on the show and off the show. When we do see Joe, we give it to him good.
He's one of our bestest friends, and as such, we treat him awfully, because that's how men do it, isn't it?
That's the English mentality for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But we do love him dearly, and I am looking forward to his eventual triumphant return, whatever that may be. Maybe we could get him on to talk about Black Templars in the future, but probably not. Probably no, not Black Templars. It's not really a Joe topic, is it?
Well, this is the thing. Like, Joe was really keen to. So I was doing Black Templars at one point, so he gave me a bunch of his bits, because he had a stack of Black Templar bits, like the old upgrade sprue and stuff. So I took all of them off him. I did a test mini, but then ended up going with Minotaurs in the end. And I still always plan to do a bit of Black Templars. And then slightly more recently, he was like, "Oh, can I have those Black Templar bits if you're not using them?" So I was like, "Sure." Posted them all back to him. And then I don't think he ever did anything with them. I think it was one of those fly-by-night fancy armies that he does for like 2 months, and then he's on to the next army already. He sold it before he's bought it, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that is quite a common occurrence for our man Joe. God bless his soul. But anyway, there we go. Thank you very much for that, Danny. Much appreciated, mate. And if any of you out there listening to this would like to be like Danny and get yourself called out on this podcast, please do leave us a 5-star review. It would be hugely appreciated. Also, just because I suppose I should say this, if you would also like to go one step further, we do have some merchandise options and a Patreon thing, but we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in the outro segment. But before we get to that, we got to do the whole bit in between. So let's get on with that with a transitional noise. Woo! All right now, my loyal listening chums, we are now going to get on to talking about the Wolfspear chapter approved codex supplement thingamabib. What are the words for this, Phil? I've forgotten already. Index Astartes.
Index Astartes, but it does also say codex supplement, so you're half right.
Oh, well, there we go. Codex supplement for the Space Marines via the pages of White Dwarf issue September 2021.
Issue 468. I think
468.
They dropped the monthly bits a while back and went back to numbers, which is confusing because it actually doesn't say, in it at all which month it's for. But then it also came out in the middle of the month, which normally means it's actually the October issue because it comes out like way ahead of when it is actually out for. Have you ever noticed that with magazines?
I did back in the olden times where I was a regular supporter of various magazines where you would purchase the November issue in September for some reason. I don't know why, or what have you. Again, who knows what the situation is on that front. But regardless of that, it is issue 468, which I suppose is a fine issue.
Yeah, comes with some fancy Wolfspear transfers as well.
I mean, are they fancy Wolfspear transfers or are they just Wolfspear transfers? What makes them fancy?
They're just really good. They're really nice. Okay. They've got some good geometric designs on them. It's pretty solid. What was different about them, if I can recall correctly? So you got some for Tome Keepers a while ago. Sorry, Tome Keepers, not Tomb Keepers.
Tome. Yep.
With those ones, you got a bunch of generic chapter stuff, but I think you also got some tactical markings as well, which was a bit of a waste of space because you can get them anywhere. Whereas with this one, you get a bunch of more unique stuff on there. But also, I guess, Space Wolves don't really do chapter markings in the same way. They do the kind of tooth claw pattern.
Pack markings, aren't they?
Pack markings, yeah. So you've got some of that in here instead.
But these, I suppose, are ultramarine flavored space wolves, though, right? Given that they are from the Ultima founding, so this will be a bunch of space wolf gene seed doodads that obviously got put into their own planetary system. And because again, this is the thing, right? As far as I'm aware, with because historically, space wolves were only assumed to be able to be born of Fenris, right? Like the whole idea was that to truly be a space wolf, you had to go through the various rituals and things that were all pretty much linked to Fenris, and that was the whole thing about it. And it was asserted that they wouldn't be able to bolster their chapter with warriors from anywhere else until obviously this Ultima founding, because essentially these are all Primaris peoples who have been, bred in a laboratory on Mars. And obviously they are now, filling their ranks with other warriors from other locations and cultures. But to the best of my understanding, these guys aren't recruiting from Fenris as well, right? They're getting from who knows where.
Well, not initially. So I've managed to read very quickly the first few pages of fluff, shall we say. And basically, Roboto Gilliman rocks up on Fenris with what wasn't wolf spears in particular. They were the grey shields for reinforcing the space wolves as a chapter as a whole. A lot of the wolf lords and ah grumble about it. So some of them aren't happy because, as you say, they're not of their culture. They're different. They didn't come from Fenris, but at the same time, they do have the blood of Leman Russ, the Primarch. So they are very much of their chapter. And but basically, Logar Grimnar, once I think Roberta Gilman leaves, goes, yes, we will recognise them, but they must conform to our ways. They're not following the kind of standard codex rules. They've got to follow, the way of the wolf, so to speak. So the Wolfspear end up being formed as part of that, but the Wolfspear also have a lot of the adepts or neophytes or whatever they might be called from Fenris themselves, because they still want to maintain that tradition. So a mixture of both, I guess, the ones that cross the Rubicon from Fenris plus the ones from the Torchbearer fleet merge to become the Wolfspear chapter, along with reinforcing the general space wolves as well. Because basically Logan Grimnar's like, they've got to prove themselves in battle to show that they really are the space wolves that they're making out to be.
Well, of course. And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Is obviously in the original founding of the Space Wolf Legion, there would have been a huge contingent of Terrans, right? That were the original kind of founding members of what, ended up being called the Space Wolves. And, Leman Russ himself is a Terran, right? He was created on Terra and was adopted by Fenris after being shot there during the whole warp storm demon shenanigans that basically placed him and all of his other brothers, the other Primarchs, in all the different locations that they resided in. So I'm not surprised that there is a relative comfortableness with this. And also as well, I mean, the Space Wolves by far and away were one of the most dramatically hit chapters or entities during the events of the Gathering Storm. Obviously the events of the Wrath of Magnus upon Fenris really kind of took its toll on the Space Wolves. So I'm not surprised that they were open to the idea. As much as I kick up a stink about the idea of Primaris Marines and Dark Angels, I do still have a bone of contention with Primaris Marines and Space Wolves, but I'm more willing to accept that simply due to the fact that they're a lot more. I think the Space Wolves are far more loyal, and I think they're far more logical than the Dark Angels in terms of their politics and in terms of how they behave. They're very much the sorts of people that, they've got their weird wibbly stuff that they do, and they've got all their strange rituals, but they're much more likely to go along with a mandate from,
Gilliman,
someone like Roberta Gilliman than the Dark Angels were. So, but again, I think both have their merits, and maybe I don't understand the lore and the background of the Space Wolves quite as well as the Dark Angels, so maybe I'm not making as fair a point of comparison, but I think with everything that the Dark Angels had going on, I'm really surprised that they've adopted Primaris, but I get it because that's what 40k is becoming now in terms of Space Marines. So it has to go that way. Similarly, it has to go that way with the Space Wolves also. But
Yeah.
I think from a lore perspective, I feel like for the Space Wolves, it almost is less bad.
Yeah,
I think
it feels like they're more pragmatic about it, maybe,
Yeah.
because they're like, well, we want this technology, it'll be useful, and we want
Yes.
this all these new raw recruits that we can mold in
Yeah.
our own fashion. That would be useful to have. And I like that they didn't just go, oh yeah, they rocked up and it was all cool, and they were like, oh brilliant, we have them. Like they did put that bone of contention in the fact that a lot of them were doing it begrudgingly, but ultimately Gilliman is a Primarch rocking up, gifting this to them. It would be like, you know, almost impossible for them to refuse, even if they wanted to, just from that alone. But also then you've got to look at it outside of the lore perspective and go, from a gaming point of view, you could never go, well, here's some Space Marine chapters that can never have Primaris. Sorry, people that want to buy our new models. For lore reasons, we're not going to let you. So they need to work it in so it can be done regardless. But then there are people that could go, well, I'm going to be a subsector or a company that isn't accepting them.
And I think that's absolutely fine and absolutely appropriate. And I think, you know, this is always why I think when it came to the Dark Angels specifically, I had no problem with the concept of a Primaris Marine being begrudgingly taken on by the Dark Angels. I have no problem with, you know, people using them. It's just when they start elevating them to Deathwing and that kind of stuff, I'm going, you know, I like the idea of maybe they let them get involved in some of the ceremonial aspects of it all. They get their white armor and they think they, you know, but they don't really know the inner circle and their secrets. But anyway,
I mean, I don't
Dark
mind
Angels,
it if they, like, the logic that they would get there eventually after hundreds of years potentially, not just you know, 2 minutes later. Oh yeah, here's the keys to our secret stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And this is the thing. Genuinely, to put that whole thing to rest, though, I don't mind anyone using whatever they want to use for whatever reason. I honestly have no issue with any version of army that you feel that you want to bring to life on the tabletop, as long as it's within the confines of the rules and so on and so forth. It's totally cool. I don't mind. I have no issue with people using Primaris Dark Angels, much less Space Wolves, Flesh Terrors, whatever you want. It's just, for my own personal preference, I found that was a bit of a weird one. But strangely, as I say, for Space Wolves, it doesn't feel too ridiculous. The only thing is, we really, really need to get to a point where Games Workshop give us more options for Space Wolves, or more Primaris options. Obviously, you've got some incredible, like, converters out there. Some people, you know, in the kind of conversion modeling communities on Instagram. I've just completely gone blank on his name, but I guess you've got people like Thunderwolfen, obviously. You know, although his isn't strictly a Space Wolf chapter, is it? What he does, even though it's got Thunderwolfen in the title.
Do you know what? I don't actually know the lore that he's done for it, so it could well be a Space Wolf successor chapter. I think he's done it. They're all his own chapters, so who knows how he's done it? It would arguably make sense to be Space Wolves. They've got that kind of tribalistic nature to them. Maybe he can reach out to us and let us know.
Indeed. But I know old Valborn or Valbjorn, you know that guy? The guy does all the incredible green stuffing on.
Yes, yeah. I'm also sure he also listens to the show and has had a little chat with us on Instagram at some point.
Yes, no, he definitely has. I have engaged in those chats. So obviously people like him are absolutely like burning the torch, as it were, for the potential of what can be achieved with Primaris minis using, you know, extraordinarily, you know, high levels of skill with regards to green stuffing and, you know, all the kind of conversion stuff that guy does to just absolutely, you know, bring that Space Wolf aesthetic to life. But for most people...
I mean, for most people, you've got those Space Wolf Reavers, their special Primaris unit that are just they're just called a different name and have some special rules. but ultimately
They are, yeah. So the Hounds of Morkai is what
Oh,
we're
that's
talking
it.
about.
Yeah.
And the Hounds.
It's a Primaris Reaver kit smooshed together like a pineapple pen with a the Primaris upgrade kit, and that
Yes.
is the Hounds of Morkai. That's what you get out of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So
I,
I do think more needs to be done to bring them to life.
hopefully, and we'll maybe talk about this in the Black Templars section, is that the Black Templars is the first sort of proper go at doing a chapter-specific Primaris units and models in a way that we haven't seen yet before. So maybe this will kickstart the next phase, because it's like, you could argue, where are you going to go with Primaris? Are you going to keep churning out generic units? I'm sure they will, but what they could do is, for the next year or two, go, rather than do generic units to just increase the Primaris army size, they're hone in on the chapter specific stuff and flesh them out. So, Primaris Sanguinary Guard, as you said, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, all of these chapters could have Primaris specific units, whether that's brand new ones or updating the old ones to Primaris. Like, both would be good.
Indeed. I would be awesome. But, if you've got, money to spare, why not commission someone like Valbjorn to create a bunch of Space Wolf units for you? I don't even know if that's the sort of thing he offers, but looking at his Instagram right now, that is an extraordinarily awesome looking set of Space Wolf minis. So, yeah, if that's what they look like normally, my goodness, there would be Space Wolf players all over the place, I'm sure. But I think that's my only real bugbear with the Space Wolves, because of all the Marine chapters, them and the Templars, I suppose, but even the Templars, there were sort of established aesthetics within the Blade Guard that kind of fit their overall look.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. It's like the Space Wolves have felt like the most disappointing aspect of the Primaris range, in so much as they've done such a good job of establishing so much character in the Space Wolf kits with the old Firstborn figures, moving it over to that generic Primaris look and appearance was quite troubling. But hopefully, obviously we've seen Ragnar. We have also seen the Battle Leader mini. And now we have the Hounds of Morkai, which I'm not going to count, because as Phil has correctly stated, they are very much a pineapple pen. But nonetheless, that's a great description, by the way, Phil. We need to use that more in all of our day-to-day communications. Anyway, the point is that I'm excited to see what the future holds for the Space Wolves, but we're not talking about them specifically at this moment in time. We're talking about the Wolfspears. So we've established they're a mixture of Fenrisian, applicants, ascendants, whatever they're called. Basically, blood claws made Primaris and a bunch of Martian Primaris matey boys, all mixed together with a little bit of Gilliman's Indomitus Crusade sprinkled on top for good measure. And that gives us these guys. So I guess, unless there's anything else you wanted to discuss about the kind of general fluff that, the engine that powers them from a lore perspective.
I could read out the designer's notes that start off the Codex supplement, because that helps set the scene. It says, the Wolfspear, an Ultima founding successor chapter of the Space Wolves. They are a brooding pack of grim hunters with little humour or levity among the ranks. They are proud inheritors of Leman Russ's legacy and display much of the warrior's culture associated with their forefather and brothers in the Space Wolves. The chapter prefers to hunt their enemies, stalking them at every angle and engaging them from the shadows, all the while waiting for the key moments to strike. For this reason, Vanguard squads are particularly suitable. When the opportunity presents itself, they go for the throat, an overwhelming display of aggression against a weakened prey. Yeah.
Sounds pretty brutal.
Yeah, sounds all right. Sounds what you would expect from a Space Wolf successor chapter.
Yes, absolutely. I like the statement, though, for this reason, Vanguard squads are particularly suitable. Does that imply then that they're not just a Primaris chapter, or?
Does it not mean like? Because I presume it doesn't mean Vanguard veterans.
Well, that's what the thing is. I was just curious, as it were, because it's that sort of statement where you think, is that what they're saying? Or is it that, or is it just that they're talking more about the kind of archetype as opposed to the specific unit? I mean, again, we'll get into the rules and we'll work out whether or not there is. Because at the end of the day, even though this is a, Ultima founding, which in the lore is a Primaris chapter, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have Firstborn Marines in there still, technically.
Yeah, so to me, rather than saying Vanguard, it should really say like what Incursor squads. Like it should be the more Phobos type units that are sort of able to sort of start on the middle of the board at the beginning of the game. That would make more sense rather than Vanguard squads, unless of course that's like an error, or they mean Vanguard as in like the literal sense of what Vanguard means, as in like to be out there ahead of the army, as opposed to technically the Vanguard squads in the Space Marine army. So it could be just a mix-up of the lexicon of the English language.
Exactly. So often is that the trouble with the Games Workshop literature, that sometimes they use words that have other implied or established meanings within their game that don't necessarily mean that in this context. But there you go.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful, confusing old, fuddly thing, but it is what it is. So let's talk about these guys from a chapter tactics perspective. The chapter tactics C Codex Space Marines gained by the Wolfspear units is Dark Terror. Now, I'm assuming Phil already knows what Dark Terror is. I'm going to look it up quickly to see if I can find it.
The Dark Terror is in the index. It's in this White Dwarf. It's not. It says the chapter tactics C Codex Space Marines.
Oh,
the Dark Terror is this. So it's saying
it's immediately written after it.
Yes. So the chapter tactic is in what a chapter tactic is. C Codex Space Marines.
Oh, they threw me there for a minute. I got all so confused, Phil. Again, words and stuff. Tell us what Dark Terror is then, Phil.
Dark Terror, add 1 to advance and charge rolls made for units with this tactic. Plus, each time a range attack is made against a unit with this tactic by a model that is more than 18 inches away, the unit with the tactic is treated having the benefits of light cover against that attack. See the core rulebook.
Oh, I'm always conflicted by these guys, or abilities such as this, in synergy with each other, in so much as you have given us an indication that you are wanting to have a mobile army, an army that is going to want to get up close and personal, but you've added in an ability that kind of goes against archetype. In the sense that it's like the Raven Guard, right? Like the Raven Guard have the same problem in so much as they want to get up close, but they also want to stay far away, and it's very weird.
I think you need to look at it if you use the second half, so the cover from over 18 inches away for the first few turns to help you get into combat, and then you're using your first part, which is the advance and charge roll. So you shouldn't look at it as I need to be doing both of these things all the time for all 5 turns. It's I just need to use one part of this for a couple of turns to get me to where I need to be while I'm also doing the other one, because that's all about movement as well. So I think that's how they're doing it. But you're right, they don't naturally, they're not in sync with each other. Like it's the opposite of synergy.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, look, +1 to advance and charge rolls is amazing. Like, it's a great, strong ability that has a lot of in-game applications. And again, really advantageous for any kind of deep striking units or any kind of, units arriving from reserves, because needing to roll an 8 to make a charge is dramatically more likely to occur than it is to roll a 9. So in that regard, there is some good play there. But again, it becomes interesting. I suppose, as Phil has sort of asserted, you've got to kind of work on the assumption that it's useful when it happens, but it's not something that you're going to necessarily, build the army around. I think you probably are going to want to sort of focus more on the aggressive, taking advantage of the, the mobility benefits, and that added layer of protection is just a nice to have when it comes up, I suppose.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, there we go. All right. So that is basically how they work from a chapter tactics perspective. Let's talk about their relics. I suppose I'll do the first one, given the fact that you just went through those side of things. So if your army is led by a Wolfspear's warlord, you can, when mustering your army, give one of the following chapter relics to a Wolfspear character model from your army. Named characters and vehicle models cannot be given the following relics. As far as I'm aware, they don't have any named characters, so doubly more difficult. But the vehicle thing, I suppose, makes sense. So the first of these is Elemental Shroud. Each time an attack is made against the bearer, subtract 1 from the attack's hit rolls.
Pretty good.
Pretty strong. The bearer is not an eligible target for ranged attacks if it is more than 18 away from the firing model. If the bearer makes any kind of move, it loses the benefit of this relic until the start of the next movement phase. And I specifically should have stated the benefit of this part of the relic. So obviously you're not losing out on the subtracting 1 to hit, but you are losing out on the fact that if you are outside of 18 inches, you cannot be targeted. Personally, I don't think it's crazy strong, on the basis that a lot of people will be positioning characters far away, supported by vehicles or units that can effectively allow them to not go targeted. So I don't imagine this is something that is going to be massively helpful, but there could be some edge cases where you can have some specific builds of character where this could be useful. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but perhaps there is.
I mean, it sort of feels like it's a bit of a sort of sniper character where he's off on his own, doing his own thing. So that is the benefit, that you could just have this guy roaming around on his own. But there's very little benefit to that on characters, because most Space Marine characters have aura abilities, so they need to be near other people. I guess the only other benefit is it stops them from being targeted by sniper units that ignore the lookout sir rule. So quite often people have been taking units with like the bodyguard ability, because that overrides the lookout sir. The rules that ignore lookout sir, they still can't get past the bodyguard rule. So with this, you could ignore all of that and just have him on his own. But yeah, I can't see many options where you'd want a guy just on his own, doing his own thing.
Certainly not amongst the Space Marine Primaris characters, I suppose.
No, if there was like a cool Phobos-y captain that you could give a sniper rifle to, or something.
There is just the Phobos captain, but it's not a sniper rifle, it's a sniper bolt gun, and I think the range of it's like 24, so you're going to be skirting around the edges of this 18-inch range, and that's the other thing within modern 40k with the smaller tables. It's so difficult to maintain an 18-inch distance between you and your enemies. If that was a 12-inch range, I'd say there'd at least be some functionality to it, but 18 inches is I just can't ever foresee a situation where that's going to ever actually pay dividends. I just don't think it's going to ever be useful. But -1 to hit's cool, so
yeah,
you just basically got to look at it as that.
I mean, that in itself is really good. Yeah,
how badly do you want -1 to hit? And I suppose it'll depend on what the other ones are. So why don't you tell us about? Oh, and also what is worth highlighting is this is a relic that doesn't replace anything. So it's not like I have to take a storm shield, or I have to take a camo cloak, or I have to take a thing. I'm just giving it. So, there are obviously other war gear options or other, loadouts that could also benefit that, such as the camo cloaks that can improve your saves and stuff. So you could make a very durable Phobos librarian, for example, out of this, which could be quite a good option.
Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. Tell us about the next one, Phil.
It's the Totem of Storms. So it's a Psyker model only. Once per battle round, you can reroll one psychic test or deny the witch test for this model. So that's
I mean,
pretty
if
good.
it was once per psychic phase, it would be tremendous. Once per battle round just makes it pretty good.
Yeah, because it's either re-rolling your test or a deny the witch test, not both. So you're right. Yeah, it's still good, but not as good as it could be. But then maybe that'd be too good.
No, I suppose if you just assert that you are re-rolling, if you just play it through in your mind as I re-roll psychic tests and occasionally get to re-roll a deny the witch test, it possibly will make it feel slightly more appealing, because I mean, when do you truly really see the full benefit of that sort of stuff? But yeah, I mean, I like it. I think re-rolling psychic tests is pretty good. So, you know, having an ability baked in that can do that is good. So no, I like it. I think that is a perfectly acceptable relic to me.
Cool.
The next one is Black Tooth. So models equipped with a combat knife or paired combat blades only. So, to the best of my understanding, the combat knife or the paired combat blades are only wielded by Phobos lieutenants, unless I'm mistaken.
I think all Reavers can get combat.
Yeah, but they are not characters, though, are they?
Okay, yeah, good point. There's the Phobos lieutenant. He probably has one.
He definitely does. Yeah, the two versions, because there's two versions of the Phobos lieutenant, and both have the combat knife. I'm not sure if any, because there are, to the best of my understanding, with regular Marine characters, none of, because back in the day, all Space Marines had combat knives, but this isn't the day anymore. This is 9th edition. And I think if you don't have a weapon, you're just assumed to just punch people with generic melee weapon that is in the rulebook, right?
Yes, but I doubt that's called a combat knife, even though it is probably considered to be a knife of some kind.
Yes, yeah, I would assume that is the case. So based on that, if I just quickly check my phone, if I go to data sheets, I'm just going to check one last potential variable with that, which is Captain in Phobos armor. Does he have a combat knife? No. Okay. So it's literally the Primaris lieutenants are literally the only option for this, as far as I can see.
So who has the paired combat blades?
That is the other form of Primaris lieutenant. So if you remember the Primaris lieutenant lieutenant in Phobos armor is the words I should be using. So if you remember the one that
there's like the jumping in the air one.
Yeah, so there's the jumping up in the air with the smoke thing. That one's the more generically available one. And then there's the one that came in the Shadow Spear box. So the one that came in the Shadow Spear box has got paired combat blades. And the one that is in Reaver armor has a combat knife. There you go. Right. So it is either lieutenant in Phobos armor or lieutenant in Reaver armor. Either way, they're the only people that can get this. But is it any good, Phil?
Well, tell me.
I will. So this relic replaces a combat knife or paired combat blades and has the following profile.
What's the stat of a paired combat blade or a combat knife? Is it just strength 0, strength normal?
So a combat knife is strength user, AP 0, damage 1. And a paired combat blade is strength user, AP -1, 1 damage.
Okay.
So looking at this from the outset, it is arguable that you would want to take this on the lieutenant in Reaver armor, because you're getting +1 strength and you're still damage 1, but you are still AP 0. But if you were to replace this with the paired combat blades, you'd be losing out on the -1 AP. But there's more. There's abilities. So let's go through that. Each time the bearer fights, it makes 2 additional attacks with this weapon. Each time the attack is made with this weapon, if a wound roll is successful, if a wound roll of a, there's a number there, Phil, I just can't see it.
No, if the wound roll is successful, the target suffers 1 mortal wound. That's it.
Oh, and the attack sequence ends. Now, does that
Yep.
mean? So that means you're doing mortal wounds instead of regular wounds.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't
Wow.
carry on to the damage step, but it means that you've got to wound them, but they don't get a save basically, and you're just doing
Wow.
your one, which is why there's no AP on it, I guess, because it doesn't need it.
So you have got 4 attacks on a Primaris lieutenant, a lieutenant in Reaver armor, 4 attacks. And when you charge in, you're going to get 5 attacks. Those 5 attacks are going to become 10 attacks. Oh no, 2 additional. Attacks, so they're going to be fine. So you're going to get 7 attacks.
Yeah.
And then of those 7 attacks, you're hitting on 2s, wounding on, let's say, 3s. So you could do quite a decent amount
Especially
of damage.
when you're re-rolling the 1s because you're a lieutenant.
Ah, yes, but you're not yourself core, Ryan.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Come on
about
now,
that.
Phil.
It's
We're not playing
ninth
the old
edition now. Yeah.
But that's pretty decent for what that is. Is it stated anywhere that these guys are Space Wolf successors?
Yes. Yeah, at the very top of the page. So it says
Oh yes, Space Wolf successors.
yeah, they're specifically Space Wolf successor chapter.
So if you are in the combat doctrine, you're getting the exploding 6s as well, which is no bad thing. So any 6s to hit will generate additional attacks.
That's cool.
Which is pretty reasonable. So you could do quite a decent amount of mortal wound damage with this guy, especially given the fact he's strength 5. So even when you're coming up against big things like, knights, you're going to be winning on 5s, but they're just going to be going straight through as mortal wounds. That's pretty tight. That was me saying that's pretty tight and tidy at the same time and got whatever nonsense that was. The point is, I don't mind that. That's all right. The Black Tooth, not too shabby.
I like it. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Nice. Tell us about the Warlord traits, Phil.
So the first one is
Strike for the throats.
Hiya! Hiya!
it's very. I can imagine a sort of James Bond style karate chop as that's happening. So each time the Warlord makes a melee attack, you can re-roll the hit roll and improve the AP characteristic of that attack by 1.
That's really strong when used in synergy with the Space Wolf's innate ability, because if you're hitting on 2s, but you can re-roll the hit roll, that means you can fish for them 6s.
That's true. Yeah.
So you can just be throwing them dice and then throwing them again, trying to get as many extra attacks out of it as possible. So that's pretty strong. And improving the armor penetration characteristics of attacks by 1 is also nothing to be sniffed at. The fact that in your combat doctrine, a chainsword would be -3 with this Warlord trait.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, an Astartes chainsword would be -1 AP.
Yeah, take that with the teeth of terror to get the extra number of attacks, and then all of those are exploding on 6s to get you more attacks.
Yep.
No, that's pretty good.
Is the teeth of terror -2 or -1?
I think it's -2 and 2 damage.
Oof. So in the combat doctrine, that would be -4 with this guy.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's re-rolling all those hit rolls. Woof. Yeah, all right. I'll have some of that. That's pretty reasonable. The next one is Hunt from Afar, which again could potentially, if the name is anything to go by, play into the archetype of their whole staying 18 inches away thingamabib. Let's see. Each time this Warlord makes a ranged attack against a non-vehicle, non-monster unit, an unmodified hit roll of 2+ is successful, and an unmodified wound roll of 2+ is successful.
Ooh, interesting. I mean, you're probably always going to hit on 2s normally, but
yes,
things like dense cover would knock it down to 3s. Or whatever else, but I'm hitting on 2s regardless. I'm basically an assassin, like The Vindicare Assassin, always hitting on 2s. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, a Vindicare Assassin is notoriously a bit bonk in the modern game, at least in terms of the competitive ideologies. Oh, wait! A captain in Phobos armor also has a combat knife. I was wrong. There you go. You can have a captain in Phobos armor with a combat knife.
Tasty.
Yeah, but I was just checking the captain because I wanted to see what the master-crafted Insigniator bolt carbine is all about. So it's range 30, assault 1, strength 4, -2, free damage. Each time you select the type of this weapon, you ignore the lookout sir rule. So he could be moving around, always hitting on 2s against enemy characters, always wounding on 2s against enemy characters. So it could be all right. But
and then what's the AP of the gun?
-2. So let's say it's -3 because tactical doctrine, but most characters you're shooting at have got invuns, and that's when the Vindicare gets his edge on this because he ignores those invuns. And yeah, I don't know, based on how poorly the Vindicare Assassin is performing in the competitive scene, and admittedly that is just the competitive scene, but I would struggle to recommend, especially when the only real viable option for this is your Phobos captain, and your Phobos captain just isn't killy enough. It's like with the gun anyway. It's like always wounding on 2s makes him significant, but again, most characters you're shooting at are going to have at least 4 wounds. So what are you doing about that last one? You got to wait a whole turn.
Well, how many shots does he do?
Just 1.
Oh, really?
One. Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where, like, I guess you could argue though that if used in synergy with eliminator squads, the other snipers, it could be a nice little additive. But again, against characters with their invuns, I just don't know. I mean, I'd be more tempted to lean into them having the black tooth and strike the throat than having the hunt from afar. But what's the last one, Phil?
Well, I was just going to say, weirdly, when we're talking about that elemental shrouds, and that feels like that's the kind of ability that the Vindicare Assassin now needs, because the Vindicare Assassin on his own can just be targeted quite easily because of the way Lookout Sir now works, and he gets like -2 to hit, but then it's always capped at -1. So I think that's one of the reasons why he's not very good, because all his defensive abilities have been nerfed based on the core rules. But if he had something like, if he's being targeted at over 18 inches away, he just can't be shot at, that would be really cool.
I think the main problem though with the Vindicare Assassin is not his survivability, but his I
find it's his lack of damage output, because quite often
I
have an insane ability to roll 1s to either hit or wound.
And I think this is the problem though with this stuff, is that, like, I think the Vindicare Assassin has got way more options or way more damage output than, say, a Primaris Captain or Primaris Captain in Phobos armor. And, again, to the point that we've made at tedium at this point, you can't really see much justification for the Vindicare. And based on that, I'm going to say the same for the Primaris Captain in Phobos armor. But interesting. It's an interesting archetype to explore with Marines. Like, I like the idea of Space Wolf snipers. It's quite a cool little idea, I guess.
Yeah. So the last warlord trait, Howling Beast, it says, while this warlord is within engagement range of any enemy model with a leadership characteristic of 7 or less, adds 2 to its attack characteristic. Now, I assume this combos with Phobos/Reaver units. So don't they have a -1 leadership ability?
They do. Yeah, you are absolutely right. So if you've got a lieutenant in Reaver armor, which I will just look up now. Lieutenant in Reaver armor has Terror Troops. So subtract 2 from leadership. Yeah. So
wow, that's really good, because this is any enemy model. So even though the sergeant, for example, might be leadership 8, the squad is leadership 7, but then also you're doing -2 to that as well.
Which pretty much means everything that your lieutenant in Reaver armor charges into is going to be -2.
Yeah, but yeah. So you're always going to get the pretty much that add 2.
The +2 attacks.
Yeah, unless you're leadership 10, which very few stuff has.
I can't think of much of anything that's leadership 10. I think Gilliman's about it. Maybe Aldred Ulfran, but I think Aldred Ulfran's even leadership 9.
I'm trying to think what Morvan Vow was. I think she was 9.
Yeah.
Most Tyranids have, is it 9, but they just have rules that auto pass, or was it lower but they have rules?
Well, it doesn't matter if they pass or not. It's the leadership characteristic.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I imagine theirs isn't 10. I think it's a range of like 7 to 8 and 9.
So if you take a Primaris Lieutenant in Reaver armor, you give him the Black Tooth and you give him the Howling Beast, that's 9 attacks.
That's a good combo
on a charge. And any 6s in the Combat Doctrine will explode with the Space Wolf Super Doctrine. So yeah, that could be pretty gnarly, because obviously then you're also doing straight mortal wounds off the back of that. So all of a sudden that Primaris Lieutenant has some very real potential to just go for the throat, as it were, which, interestingly is the name of Warlord trait number 1, although strike for the throat, not go for the throat. But yeah, I'm torn, because I'm torn. I don't think strike for the throat is the way that you want to go if you're leaning into Blacktooth, because having +1 to your AP is meaningless if you're doing mortal wounds.
Yeah.
But also just going straight, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, going straight into mortal wounds, because obviously then you're ignoring invulns as well, which is massive for a lot of things. You think about those tanky characters that people take, like, Custodes, shield captains on jet bikes, although admittedly they've usually got 5-up, feel no pain. But the fact that you're going through that 3-up invuln, or you think about, various storm shield characters or whatever, just, being able to blast through that. It's just, the question is even if you have 9 attacks, hitting on 2s, winning on 3s, say that's the case, it'd probably be winning on 4s against a lot of characters. But let's say you're winning on 3s in that situation. I mean, the maths hammer on that is that you should get 8 hits, and of those 8 hits, you should get 5 wounds, which means that you're not killing most things even then. So, unless, of course, then 2 of those hits were 6s, and then in which case you could say that by working out some things, you could say that, you now did 6 wounds, which does put you in the boundaries of killing most things, as long as it's not in Gravis armor.
Yeah, I guess the trade-off is, so Blacktooth is good at dealing damage to stuff that's got really great saves or invuns, but it's not a huge amount of damage, because each attack only translates into 1 mortal wound. Whereas if you had a weapon that's 2 or 3 damage, each attack is doing way more damage, but it's got to get through. So it could just give you an extra bit of versatility when if you got let's say you have the Teeth of Terror, but then all of a sudden you're up against something with a really good invuln save. You're like, you wouldn't have the Teeth of Terror and Blacktooth, so forget that. But if you had decent close combat weapon like a Power Fist or whatever it might be, not that many Primaris characters actually have that. But if you have a decent combat weapon with decent AP, you might go, great, that I'll use that as my mainstay against most things. But then, I'm up against a really tougher unit with great armor save. I'm going to swap this out for my relic, because that's going to get me out of a sticky situation.
Interesting, though, for sure. I'm not hating this. Let's talk about their stratagems, and then we can summarize our thoughts and feelings on everything. So, Phil, please, the first of the stratagems.
It's Track and Hunt. It's 1 CP. It's a battle tactics stratagem, whatever that might mean.
One day something, but for now, nothing.
Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one friendly Wolfspear core unit, then select one enemy unit within 24 inches of it. Until the end of your turn, each time a model in that unit makes an attack against the enemy unit, that enemy unit does not receive the benefit of cover for that attack. Right, so you just select an enemy unit within 24 inches and they lose cover.
Can be big, but only against units that are obviously gaining other benefits. So again, if you're shooting at a unit of, eliminators in camo cloaks, great, because obviously you're nerfing their invuln benefit, not their invuln, sorry, their cover save benefits. So if you're doing one of those sniper battles like the one depicted in that film with the Russian played by
Enemy at the Gates.
Enemy at the Gate. There we go. There's the words I couldn't remember.
Jude Law. Yeah.
Jude Law, absolutely.
Great.
Fantastic. Great. I mean, if not for good film, but, let down by the fact that there was obviously a clear lack of Russian accents going on in that side of things.
Well, that's a classic British movie for you.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember. Did they do that? Was it Hunt for Red October thing where they started out the film speaking in Russian and then they just transitioned to English?
They might have. Yeah, that was
they do one of
clever
those
technique. Yeah, I quite like that when they did that.
I don't know. Was that clever or was that just a bit sort of like?
It was definitely clever. Definitely.
Yeah, I suppose it's something in it. It's supposed to just go. We could have done this.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, 100 for Red October. They're not just doing it in a Russian accent. They're speaking Russian, and it's all subtitles, and then it transitions into English.
Do you reckon they focus group the ever-living bejeebus out of that to find out exactly the point where audiences were like, hang on a second here, this isn't what I signed up for, and we're about to leave. And then as they started to get up from their seats in the cinema, they started speaking English, and they were like, good. So I'll sit back down.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
Probably. Anyway, Killing Blow is the second one.
Well, I was just going to say, sorry, with that track and hunt one, because it ignores cover saves, I guess you can also use it in combat if the person's going to benefit from heavy cover.
Okay, true.
Not that many people often do that. But what's also weird about it is you do it at the end of the movement phase, that obviously affects the shooting phase.
Weird. So it's end
of
the turn.
And it lasts at the end of the turn.
Phases out of it, yeah. So if they're in heavy heavy cover, the one with the saves for the shooting and the fighting, then maybe it could come in handy. I mean, this is the thing. At the end of the day, if you've got something sat in cover going, I've got a 0-up save, as is their want, being able to turn that off sometimes is incredibly useful. Killing Blow is the second one. It is 1 CP, and it is a battle tactic. Ooh. When their prey is bleeding out, the Wolfspear strike hardest to deliver the killing blow. So at the point, Phil, where they're practically already dead, they make sure to really, stave their heads in to really make sure the job is done. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase or the fight phase. Not your fight phase, just any fight phase. So again, another great example of Games Workshop's rules writing. So it can be in your shooting phase or any fight phase. There you go. Glorious.
Is it meant to be your shooting phase or fight phase?
No, because that is actually accurate. That's good rules writing by Games Workshop there, because obviously you can activate in your opponent's fight phase, not just your fight phase. So, and it's, by saying your shooting phase, it alleviates the possibility that you could use some sort of stratagem to shoot in your opponent's shooting phase and then also gain the benefits of this stratagem, you see?
Okay.
It's clever. It's not bad.
Take your word for it. Tell us what it does.
All right. When a Wolfspear core unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if the target of the attack was below half strength when it was selected as the target, or if the target has a starting strength of 1 and had half or less of its wounds remaining when it was selected as the target, add 1 to the wound rolls. It's all right.
Well, add 1 to wound is always really good. What I like about it is it also works on characters or models with multiple wounds.
Yes, and that is nice, obviously. And again, what's really good about this is it hasn't specified anything with regards to vehicles or monsters or characters. So you could be shooting at a
Titan.
Again, you could be shooting at an Imperial Knight or a Titan. You could be shooting at I can't think of a name of a Titan, a Warhound Titan, and you could have reduced it to 10 wounds somehow, and then you'll be wounding it on +1, which, again, when you look at things like the Imperial Fists Codex or other supplements, Tank Hunter is quite an expensive ability. Giving yourself +1 to damage vehicles has up to this point been an expensive CP strat. Now, obviously, there's a stipulation on this. You have to have already damaged them to the extent that they are now below half strength. But regardless, it's still, for 1 CP, that could be crazy useful in the right context.
Yeah.
So
Super
Yeah, I like
thematic as well.
yes, yeah, absolutely. All right, Phil.
The
last one is yours.
The last one, On the Scent.
Oh.
1 CP. It is a strategic ploy stratagem. Use this stratagem at the start of your charge phase. Select one enemy unit that had models destroyed or lost any wounds this turn until the end of that phase. Each time a charge roll is made by a friendly Wolfspear core unit, if that enemy unit was selected as the target of the charge, you can reroll the charge roll. So you basically need to have done damage to it in some capacity earlier that turn, so shooting or psychic. And then you just get to, any unit gets, core unit gets to reroll charge rolls. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, again,
if you're expecting to do lots of multi-charges, or you're doing a charge somewhere else and you think you might need several rerolls to charge, getting this one in is pretty good. I guess sometimes if you're pretty close, if there's one unit and you want to like really charge another unit, then you could also target this one to just get the benefit of the reroll, even if it's not your main target.
I suppose where this is less useful is the fact that you have to do it at the start of your charge phase, right? So you have to basically say from the outset, I'm going to reroll to charge with this unit. I have met the stipulation. I have done some damage to this unit already. And this unit that is going to then attempt to charge said unit is then going to benefit from this reroll. But then you roll the dice and you're successful and you go, cool, well, that's 1 CP out the window. And I think that's the thing that's slightly frustrating about it. It feels to me that the reroll should have been a benefit, but it feels like there needed to be an extra thing, like +1 to wound, +1 to hit, something just to give it.
Well, I think
less
the
of a feel
benefit
bad.
is it works on multiple units, as opposed to if it was one unit, then you'd want
Well,
an
you can't
extra
use
buff
it.
with it. Because you
Oh, yes,
apply
it's
it to
one
the
enemy
target.
unit.
So it's if you
Oh.
want to target that unit. But like I said, if you select a unit that also has other units next to it that you really want to charge, you can use that as like a sort of honing beacon for all your units to charge multiple units, not just that one.
So that is an interesting sort of edge case, isn't it? Does this still apply if you then charge multiple units? So if it is that I declare that unit and another, do I still get the reroll?
Yeah, because you still need to make the charge though for all of them. Remember, as part of
of
9th
course.
edition. But as long as it's one of the targets, I would say that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in theory, but I would also suggest that that's not entire. I can't remember what rulings they've made for similar situations. So I can't speak with confidence right now as towards whether I think our assertion is accurate, but it feels like the way that it should work. But again, they're not going to FAQ this, so I guess we're just going to have to, unless they do. Have they ever FAQ'd any of these?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I think the only time they've done something similar was when either 9th edition came round or the 9th edition Space Marine Codex came round, and they basically said those old blood Raven rules from 8th edition Index Astartes is no longer valid.
Strong
I think that's
FAQ right there.
yeah, I think they've just done it too. We're writing these rules out, so you can't use them. That's basically the equivalent of the FAQ.
Fine.
I'm trying to think. Maybe Harlequins had one because that was effectively a whole army. So if they might have got one, but I don't think any of the sort of chapter specific ones. No one cares about them, to be honest. To give them that kind of attention, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? There's such sort of weird little edge case things that, you know, I do think there is still some potential for people to really, you know, disrupt things with some of these Index Astartes. I still feel like the Exorcists have got some real opportunities to them. Maybe we should revisit those rules at some point and just kind of evaluate their functionality based on the current, you know, Thousand Suns and Grey Knights world that we occupy now.
I mean, I'm sure at some point when we run out of a topic to do for the show, we do an Index Astartes top 10.
Yes.
And we do a rundown and we'll see how accurate we are.
Could you imagine if, we did a rundown of best chapters and successor chapters, and our number ones were all, 1, 2, and 3 were all obscure white dwarf supplements.
Oh, well, I mean, you could do that. Sorry, I was meaning just of the Index Astartes. Once there are 10 of them, we do a top 10 of our favourite order.
Nice. What's the one that is probably not going to get very high up there? There was one that wasn't even an actual index. It ended up just being like a flipping army of renown, wasn't it? Oh, that was it. It was the Fallen. Yes.
Yes, it was an Index Astartes, but it was effectively a reprint.
Index Hereticus.
Index Hereticus was a reprint of the old Psychic Awakening one, so it wasn't very good. Sorry, Chaos players.
Well, indeed. The double whammy. The Fallen never get any love. They they got everything they were ever going to get in 3rd edition, and that was it.
Yeah, I sort of feel like maybe they do a Black Templars-esque re-release for them. I don't know, in 7 years' time.
I would love that if they really did the Fallen justice. You know, the thing to put on my wish list of the things that really need the love and support within the realms of old armies that were awesome that need to be redone.
Is it Legion of the Damned?
Absolutely. Get back them Legion of the Damned, lads.
I know.
That's what we want to see.
It was quite cool when they had them in 7th edition. They saw quite a bit of play as well in terms of...
Oh, yeah, they were
fun. The rules were really good.
They were good in 8th as well.
Yeah. It's a shame they've kind of just written them out. I don't know if it's because they just don't know what to do with them, or they've gone, we don't really have models for them anymore. It's
so weird, though, isn't it? Because for so many people, going off on a tangent here, apologies, but for so many people, the Legion of the Damned were like one of the most iconic, most aspirational Space Marine armies for so many people.
As a teenager, they were, and this is something I completely forgot about for many years. My first Space Marine army, I actually did I think I had one squad of sort of generic plastic Space Marines that I converted up, and I had a couple of characters. I think I used Mephiston, the Blood Angels character, converted him up to be my I guess Legion of Damned librarian or something, and I did a weird tech marine with a grav cannon that was made out of a plasma gun and some bits of wire. But yeah, I loved painting those up, and even if it was just one squad, it was super cool.
Yeah,
I remember also, they play into the aspect of they're great ally units. Any Imperium faction should, in theory, be able to take one squad of Legion of the Damned as a thing that you can just bolt onto your army, a bit like Inquisitors and Assassins. They should just throw them in there as well.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that was the thing, wasn't it? During the events of something. Oh yeah, it was during the fall of Cadia that
they turned up. Yeah,
they turned up, but there was an occurrence that basically wiped out all of the demons because I think one of the pillars or something had been positioned. And in the moment before the rift occurred, all of the demons were basically banished. But in doing so were the Legion of the Damned. And I think the implication is that was the end of them. And then they've not come back since, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, because they've not appeared in any of the Space Marine codexes.
Which is weird, because they were so cool. Anyway, there you go. Maybe one day soon. I was going to say Andy, not Pete. As we know him down the Factorum these days. Andy, not Pete, Army of Paints did a beautiful range of Legion of the Damned conversions and minis back in, crikey, years ago. I always used to remember following Andy's old 40k blogs on Army of Paints, where it used to just be him in his shed talking about his obscure Legion of the Damned project. How much things have changed, Phil. Now I'm sat here talking to you as you talk to me in your shed about Minotaurs and
my obscure conversions. Yeah,
that's it, mate. That's it. I've obviously got a type. But anyway, enough of that nonsense out of the way. The Wolfspears, what do we reckon? Do we feel like there is some play in these guys? What's your general feelings on them, Phil?
yeah. I mean, they seem reasonably thematic, although, as we said when they were talking about Vanguard, it feels like they really meant in cursors. It feels like they're definitely like a Phobos Reaver army more than anything else.
Oh, definitely a Phobos army.
Yeah, there's some good rules. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not super great either, but you can instantly see there's a couple of cool combos in there. I'm sure if you then also looked at the Space Wolves supplement as well, there'd be a couple more, because obviously you get access to all of their relics, or the successor portion of the special war gear they call it and stuff. So there might be some other bits in there where you could see the combos coming through and stuff. But yeah, overall it seems all right. A good like B. A being
Nice.
the best, just in case you don't live in England and use that kind of scoring.
Indeed. So I mean, from my side of things on the Wolfspears, I think they are a confused force. I think there's some really interesting elements. I think they've got some fun things that make them quite interesting, and I think they could catch a few people by surprise. And I like the idea of a Phobos Space Wolf army. I think that's super cool. And it's obviously an archetype they've led into with the Hounds of Morkai, and there's clearly some interesting kind of builds that you can do around that. I'm just not completely convinced that this is going to be something that Space Wolf players or, aspiring 40k gamers are going to be falling over themselves to do. But if you are, there's definitely an interesting project in here, and there's something that you could definitely do a lot of really great conversion work with. And, I think from a kind of
they've
color
got a great
scheme
paint scheme, yeah. Like it's sort of like off white with a slightly bluey grey tinge. Then it's black backpacks and shoulder pads, again with that kind of off-white bluey tinge trim, and then it's like mostly red and black markings, so it looks like it's a really solid color scheme. But weirdly, before this came out, I saw on Instagram a bunch of the White Dwarf, or not even White Dwarf, the studio artist team. So there's a guy called Max. He's does often quite like the interviews and stuff when Stormcast Eternals come out, because he's part of the painting team. He previewed some of these models, because I think a bunch of them all painted up models for White Dwarf issue. So when I saw it then, I was like, oh, wow, these are pretty cool. And then, actually seeing them in the magazine, like they look solid. They'd be a fun. I think I'd rather paint up this color scheme than the normal Space Wolf color scheme.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a soft spot for the normal Space Wolf scheme. I think it's a pretty iconic, classic scheme. But I agree with you. I think there's some interesting elements to it from a visual perspective, but moreover, from a gameplay perspective, I think there's some fun stuff you could do with it. And I think, depending on what people's own kind of aspirations are for what they want to kind of collect and build and customize, I think there's a lot of really fun things you could do with this. So yeah, I don't know, it's weird. It's not going to be an army that you're going to take to win events, right? Like if you're looking at it from a competitive perspective, it's got its problems because it doesn't massively synergize with some of the other kind of Space Wolf elements, but it's pretty cool. I like it. And the other thing is, and I will say this as well, despite the fact that obviously a lot of its specialist equipment and a lot of its specialist gear is very heavily influenced by the Primaris Phobos range, there's nothing stopping you, as far as I can see, in using some of your firstborn units and options and taking advantage of this rule set should you want to.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure when it came to Tomb Keepers, I'm sure, or Tome Keepers, damn it, I keep
Tome
getting it
Keepers,
wrong.
Tome Keepers.
I'm pretty sure they said like this is meant to be a Primaris only chapter. They don't go you can't take others, but they go designers note you should probably take Primaris. They don't say that here. So as you say, even though it's thematic to go all Primaris, you could not, and that would still be technically, match play legal if you wanted it to be.
Yep. Well, there we go. I reckon that has done the Wolfspears some amount of credit and some amount of justice. Maybe one day in the future, once we've got... How many more of these do we need to do the top 10?
I think 6. I think we've done at least 4. Maybe we've done 5. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm trying to think. Because we missed
Maybe
2.
it was 5.
Because we missed... Was it 1 out that we then...
We missed
redid?
1 out, yeah.
I think we did 3, then another one.
And then this
so
one.
it's 4, 5.
Well, we've got a top 5 if nothing else.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we'll see
Get
how
that
we
in
get
there.
until the end of the year.
We should revisit the top 10 Marine chapters.
Well, yes, now in the new 9th edition world.
Yep. I was right on a few accounts, though. I will say this.
Well, you were right in hindsight, but wrong at the time.
No, I was thinking about the long-term picture. You see, I was
predicted what the Dark Angels rules would be before they came out, and knew they.
The Dark Angel rules were out at the time. They were just in the index. They were in the errata. Thing.
Yes, yeah.
But it just ended up being what they were, and then I'd say I over-egged the Death Watch for sure. I was really impressed initially by their kill team shenanigans. Yeah. But, Imperial Fists are definitely the worst. That much.
That's true. And I called out my go-to White Scars, and they seem to be doing pretty well for themselves.
Oh, yeah. They're all right. They're good.
What I find, though, is that they seem like a really solid first founding chapter, but they're an okay successor chapter, because a lot of the stuff that sort of amps them up, I think, into being really good, Khan, and action and relics that are specific to the first founding.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, that'll do for that. We're going to move on now to whatever it is that we decide to do next, which is probably Black Templars, but let's find out. Transitional noise. Woo! Core blimey, Phil. Finally. Good old Valric was right all along. Black Templars are a thing made evident by recent Gen Con reveals. Are you excited, Phil? Are you excited? Are you regretting the fact that you've spent the last 2 years slaving away over 30 or so intercessors?
I mean, I do shed a tear to an extent, but I'm
a bronze tier.
Yes, I'm nearly there. I'm nearly there, though. But however, so I think if these models had come out 2 years ago when I was deciding about whether to go Minotaurs, Death Watch, or Black Templars, this probably would have swung me into Black Templars. And I'm glad I didn't just wait 2 years for them. They're cool. Indeed. They're really great. I'm sure I may get a squad of them at some point, but I'm also a bit over Black Templars, just from the point of view of I'm doing Minotaurs now.
You're a Minotaur man. You've chosen your your preference, and you're sticking with it now.
I pinned my allegiance to the tail of that donkey, and I have to ride with it.
You are much more a servant of the High Lords of Terror than you are fella McLaddie boy who was good with a sword. Dawn. Was it Dawn?
Sigmundson.
No, not Dawn. Sigmundson. Sigismund.
That's how you pronounce it.
That's the one. Yeah, him and his Black Templars, no less. I mean, I am surprised that you aren't slightly more hurt by the reveal of the Black Templars, because in many respects, Phil, everything about what they have unveiled for the Black Templars is a nod to all of your favorite things in 40k. And
give me a rundown. What are those things?
Well, first of all, they have been heavily influenced and made it abundantly clear that this model range is obviously heavily influenced by the 3rd edition cover artwork by John
I know.
Blanche, going to the extent that their limited super special edition codex is using the same artwork from 3rd edition
I
Warhammer
know.
40,000.
Do you know what? I kind of really want the box just for that reason alone. Just because that cover that is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think I would. I don't think I could justify it to myself. But yeah, that that cover art looks pretty swanky.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And then obviously all of the aforementioned reasons why you were always intrigued by the Templars. I know you like the crusading aesthetic of them. I know you enjoy the whole kind of olden day Knight Templar type of vibe that they give off.
I like them candles on those backpacks. That's very cool.
I was there it is. That was also gonna say they've also got an abundance of candles, which again I know that you've extensively worked on modeling and crafting. And the Grand Master, the High Marshal Helbricht, has got serfs.
Oh, I know.
He's got a couple of little serfs around him, and we know for a fact that if Grimaldus is to appear, he is well known as well for being accompanied by servitors that carry relics around for him.
Yeah,
so it does feel like so it does feel like the Templars are basically tapping into everything that you love about the 40k universe and or Space Marines place.
It is true, and it is an aesthetic I do quite like. However, it's weird because it feels like it's a bit of a juxtapose to what Primaris were all about when they first released them. Like, they were all very clean. They didn't have like embossed shoulder pads. Everything was like transfers. There was a kind of simplistic minimalist look to them, and that's sort of what I've tried to go with as the vibe for my Minotaurs. So I've tried to keep that Primaris aesthetic as simple as possible, like even to the extent with my Blade Guard I've removed the tabards from them because I don't want them on there, because they don't really fit in with the Greek sort of mythology vibe anyway, but also just to keep in keeping with that simpler look. I think the most detail I've added onto them is with the Mark III shoulder pads for some of my veteran models. Because when I look at these, is it embossed shoulder pads with the kind of sculpted detail on them, I don't like as much as if they were just transfers. But I do like pretty much everything else about these minis.
I am warming to the idea of transfers over embossed details. It has to be said. I think I think the transfers in a way kind of make the kind of figure look more of, it looks more kind of correct within the sort of
it looks
narrative
more painted on as opposed to sculpted on. I mean, both in terms of in real world it could be done, and to do a little side adjacent story. So I've been painting up the back banners on my sergeants for my 3 10-man intercessor squads. Two of which have brass detail from the old Forge World kit that I've added onto them. So I kind of smooshed it onto the banner to make it conform to the contortions of the banner. One of them I didn't, because it already had the detail sculpted on the plastic banner. So for that one, I've just applied, I painted it up, applied a transfer inside that circle. The other two were an absolute nightmare. I absolutely hated it, like having to paint up all the sculpted detail. So you've got on one of them like the wings and then the Minotaur symbol, and then the other one was a Minotaur symbol on a circle with a lambda, triangle shape behind it. So painting all of that up, I absolutely hated every minute of it. However, now they're painted and I look at those two in comparison to the one that's got the flat transfer on, I actually prefer the sculpted detail that I've painted on, because it looks better. Even though at the time I was like, I'm never doing this, I'm just doing transfers again. And I think maybe it's just because I haven't got like a decent transfer to have gone in the spot where I have done a transfer. I'm not sure. I think I'll still have to think about it and weigh up my two options. So painted, if you can do any kind of freehand or paint on embossed, can look good. I basically have said what I like to do for my banners is the opposite of what I like to do for shoulder pads. And I think especially for shoulder pads, when it comes to doing a mass number of infantry, transfers 100% the way to go, so much quicker. Like all of these, I believe, have sculpted shoulder pads on them. Looks like they're all sculpted. That's going to be a pain to paint up for your 10-man squad, let alone 30-man squad or whatever you might end up having to paint up.
Yeah, no, of course. So in terms of the models revealed, I might as well just start with what I feel like is the main event, and that is High Marshal Helbricht. So for context, the High Marshal Helbricht miniature that was released for 4th edition was, for a long time, in my estimates, one of the best Space Marine character sculpts that GW had ever released at the time. There was so much kind of attitude and so much kind of, movement, but also just something so dramatically different about Helbricht versus every other character that had sort of come before him. I think Helbricht, in a way, kind of ushered in the era of new Marine characters, because after Helbricht, we received Vulcan Hesperin, we received Lysander, we received Pedro Cantor, loads and loads of sculpts for new Marine characters to coincide with the Marine 5th edition book, which introduced a whole heap of really exciting new rules for all of this, new exciting additions. In fact, I think Lysander may have been a 4th edition sculpt as well. I can't remember the exact timeline, but I definitely remember Helbricht being one of the kind of originators of this new, range of Marine characters that started to reimagine and redefine what, Space Marine heroes look like within the evolving world of Warhammer 40,000. So prefacing this, I thought Helbricht, the old model, is a great model and is still a good model today. This Primaris Helbricht model is, in my opinion, the single greatest Space Marine miniature they've ever made. Everything about him is perfect, in my opinion. The pose, the diorama that they have built around him, his expressions, everything about this kind of embodies what I imagine the Space Marine needs to be. And I think in a lot of ways, the diorama setting really kind of brings this in all to life in a way that, we've never seen for a Space Marine miniature before this. Because I think one of the things that these servitors, these menials, these serfs attending him as he is going about his duty, his crusade, really does an incredible job of effectively communicating to the viewer, how much of a sort of transcendent creature Helbricht is, how much the Space Marine, High Marshal is above these lowly kind of creatures that support him in, achieving his output. And I think that's incredible. I think, again, just that little bit of detail just elevates him in a way that makes him easily the best Space Marine character. And that's not even touching upon all of the other little kind of nuanced details that they've added to this figure. I genuinely cannot shower this thing with enough praise. I think it is the best Space Marine miniature ever made. And I think it's going to be a real struggle for them to top this. I'm sure they've got it in them somewhere, but yeah, this is as close to perfection as a Space Marine miniature could ever be, in my opinion. Phil, what's your vibe on Helbricht?
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. It's like it's a good mini. Like I really like it too. And you're right, it probably is either Space Marine minis or characters come, it is got to be up there with like some of the best. It is fantastic. I have seen some criticism where people were complaining about the molded base, that if you're against an orc, but you don't play an orc opponent on a regular basis, it's kind of like it's theming your base against how you might not have themed your army. It is very thematic for Black Templar players, though. So that's something. What I like about it is copy of the artwork, basically, and that's fantastic. The fact it's got hashtag Codex Serfs in there as well is fantastic. Like, I want the mini for those two chapter Serfs more than anything, because as much as I like Helbrecht himself, I think it's an astonishing model. I can't see myself converting him from my Minotaurs at all, just because of his aesthetic is so like different from what I'm after from my Minotaurs. However, phenomenal model. Like, they've done a really great job. There's a few things I noticed. The sort of star symbol on his left, but on the picture's right knee pad, like they've swapped that over from left to right from the old model. Interestingly, they say in the article that he's now lost his hand while fighting against what was it? One of the Necron Imatech, the Stormlord, one of the Necron lords, which is incorrect, because actually he had lost it before in the old one as well. It was just never painted up silver, but it was actually modeled like the whole arm is gone. And an interesting side story, so Mark Gibbons, who is the artist who did the artwork that was in there, he posted up his original kind of concept sketchwork, because he actually came up with the design, as far as I'm aware, of Helbrecht. And in that, he has his whole arm missing. So it is a whole kind of mechanical servo arm. And that was from concept. So the fact that the community team seemed to think that that's a new addition is completely incorrect, which is, probably just a mistake. Another interesting thing, I don't know if you saw the hoo-ha about it, but the artwork that they had, which is Mark Gibbons, well, it's by Mark Gibbon. I don't want to say it's his artwork because it's owned by Games Workshop, but it was originally posted up and they had airbrushed out his signature. And there was a lot of I saw a lot of drama about it online. Lots of people saying, why are they taking off the artist's initials? Like, that's really bad, like not crediting the artist. Mark Gibbons even did a little post about it and said that, and now he sells little MG, which is his initials, stickers for people to buy to stick on, bits of artwork and stuff. But what has happened since today, they've replaced the artwork with the original that does have his signature on it. So obviously Games Workshop has seen that there's been a bit of a backlash against it and corrected it by putting the original one up. And there's a wider conversation about like how Games Workshop doesn't credit people, like even with Warhammer animations, they say just from the studio, they say that in their books.
Which is, they credit the musicians, but I think that's due to like union requirements and things like that. Because I think like
it sort of, it feels like it all spills back to the days of Matt Ward getting death threats because people just hated what he'd done with books, and so the Games Workshop probably feel like they're protecting their employees by anonymizing everything, so you don't know who's done what. You can't go, oh, it's by this artist or this writer, therefore it's rubbish, and prejudge it, or find them on Twitter, especially now we live in a world which is much more social media heavy. So it feels like they can't win either way, because they either allow the artists and writers to all be credited, but they could face a lot of public backlash, or they don't and they do what they're currently doing, but then people hate them for not crediting them properly. They're sort of stuck, like a bit of a rock and a hard place, I would say.
Well, I think at the end of the day, crediting artists and creators is definitely important. And, if the rules writing team want to have a certain level of anonymity around who writes which rule, then that might be something that needs to be kind of, understood as the exception, but broadly I think it's important, certainly for the artist, to be credited. I know if I had been fortunate enough to have lived out my dream career of illustrating for Games Workshop, that was one of the things I always dreamed of doing as a young lad. If that were me, I definitely would have wanted to have seen my name accredited. And Mark Gibbons specifically, again, one of the most influential people to me in terms of bringing the hobby to life. Like, all my favorite artwork is by this guy.
Same here.
The Helbrecht image, oddly, isn't actually amongst my favorites, but even then it's still an extraordinarily great piece of artwork. And that guy sparked my imagination and my interest in the hobby more than almost anything. I remember looking at his illustrations of like the Craftworld units and just poring over the details and replicating the artwork as best as I could, and continuing to kind of develop and explore like how I myself could start to try and even replicate that sort of style. So yeah, no, that individual in particular has always been something of an inspirational character to me. And seeing him not being included or not being given the relevant credits would have been a real shame. So it's good that Games Workshop saw sense and retroactively sort of fix that in the way that is their want, where they change stuff but don't say they've changed it, but just hope that you'll go away.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say one other thing in terms of the model. Have you noticed there's something quite special about this model? Can you guess what it is?
It's got a bucket helmet.
Well, he does have that, and let's talk about that first of all. Do you like that helmet?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I think, again, it's a really cool addition to the mini that gives you, options and flexibility. But again, it's very knightly. Again, I'm struggling to identify the reference material, but I definitely look at that and think I've seen that before. And obviously, you can immediately be like, yes, it looks like generic knight helmet. But I think there's like a specific pop culture reference to that I've not quite pinned down yet.
Is it the Black Knight from Monty Python?
No, because that's just a sort of weird kind of consistent like bin thing.
Yes.
He looks more like Count Binface than anything else. Although Count Binface obviously has a Buckethead. That's the word. That was the guy, wasn't it? The guy who used to be Binface, but then they had like some weird IP thing. I can't remember how that whole thing went. But if I was in the London area for voting purposes, I would have definitely voted for Buckethead to be the mayor, because why not? Anyway, no, I like it. Why you not keen?
I don't know. It's one of those things where it on its own, it's cool, but at the same time, it steers it sort of too far away from the Space Marine aesthetic, where it then loses the identity of being a Space Marine. It's a little bit like, so, if you look at Asterion Moloch, the chapter master of the Minotaurs, his has got a bit of a kind of Spartan style helmet to him, which on him, and again, this is obviously a special character, so it works, but I wouldn't want every single model to have Spartan style helmets or knightly helmets, just because it then makes them not look like Space Marines. I'm sure there are people out there that would love all their Black Templars to look like this, because it gives it a bit more of a knightly feel to them.
But no, Phil, go on. What was the thing that I was supposed to have observed, but didn't think of it at the time?
It's the first ever Primaris combi bolter.
Oh yes, look at that. The first ever Primaris combi bolter. He desperately tries to think of an example to the contrary. Did Lazarus have a combi plasma?
I don't think so. I think he just had a plasma pistol. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's the first one. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments or shout into the void on your drive to work, Lawrence. or Matt.
to work, Lawrence.
I mean, I might have scored with someone going, "Oh, that is me," and I am driving to work.
And my name is
Exactly.
Lawrence.
I could have.
Oh no. Yeah, no. So I'm looking at Lazarus. He does not have a combi weapon. Trying to think if there is any other Primaris character that could have had a combi weapon. I'm coming up blank. I am coming up blank, Phil. So you think you are correct. I'm going to say you're correct, and we'll leave it at that. If you're wrong, we'll just never admit it, like like the sensible people we are. And that's cool because obviously it is a bolt rifle combined with a melter gun.
Yeah.
So
Nice. It looks
very cool. No, look, I mean, again, it's a bit of a weird one, right? Because I just can't say enough good stuff about it. I think you put this guy alongside Roberto Guilliman, this Helbrick looks like, the dude in charge.
It's
like,
so much more character to him, I think. And I think, partly, and this is one of the first times we've seen it with Space Marines, that they've made it a diorama. So you had what was it, Sergeant... It's like Jokarov, something like that. He's the one with the chainsaw in the orc. And that was
the battle damage.
And I think he was the Warhammer Store limited edition one. He had quite a lot of personality because of the pose and the diorama of the base. This guy, because he's got the attendants, he's a bit almost like the Necron Silent King, or the St. Catherine, Triumph of St. Catherine, like a little more dioramic to it. And this makes it so much better. It like elevates it above just Guilliman on his own on some rocks. What I also like about this is it does...
I mean, Guilliman is standing on a Tyrannid head. Ooh.
Yay. But what I like about it is...
Not Guilliman, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, that's...
Tyrannid
what I
head.
like about it...
Guilliman's on an eagle.
Oh, yes, a stone eagle. Not really eagle.
Yes.
He's not a bird killer.
No.
But what I like about it is, as you said, because of the chapter serfs in there, it sort of shows you a side of how Space Marines go to war that you don't see on the tabletop. Like, if you look at especially the old John Blanche artwork, like the Sisters of Battle iconic one that he did, or just some of the newer artwork that they're adding in there, it's like Space Marines don't go to war in isolation on their own. It's like they do have all these chapter serfs running around, carrying ammo, carrying banners. There are, Adeptus Ministorum, priests and adepts and all these other people in the battle sort of with them. And you don't see it on the tabletop because it just doesn't make sense. But I'm glad, and, this is why I've been banging on about hashtag Codex Chapter Serf for such a long time, because I want to see that on the tabletop. And I plan on getting these kind of models and just using them as like wound counters so I can have them on the tabletop, but without interacting with the game, but they're still visually there doing something, and adding an extra dimension to it. So that's one thing I really like about this, beyond obviously Helbrecht himself looking phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's just there's so much personality, so much to wax lyrical about. But I think again, if you've not already seen this for yourself, we encourage you to go onto the Warhammer community website and take a look at this miniature, because it's absolutely stupendous.
Probably gonna win the model of the year that they always do at the end of the year.
For me, certainly. I struggle to think of, and again, there have been more fantastical models. There have been miniatures that have really brought their A game. I mean, obviously there are so many gorgeous Age of Sigmar minis that have come out this year, specifically some of those new Naughty Boy beasties that they've done are utterly incredible.
Even some of the Curse City models, or the vampires. They had a lot of really great models.
The vampire range. But the thing is that because of the importance of Space Marines within the lore, within the lexicon of Games Workshop, a truly iconic Space Marine miniature is something special. When you do something like this, its place within the lore, within the Games Workshop ecosystem, elevates it beyond those superior kind of, technical miniatures and technical spectacles they've created. This is something about this character and this pose in this setup just gives it weight that transcends the sculpt itself, even though the sculpt is stunning. So that's the thing. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm being a little bit too fanboy on this one. I'm not going to buy him as great as I think he is because I don't need him. But the point is that it's stunning, and I'm sure it will inspire many a person to go out there and start playing Black Templars.
Isn't it?
And if the rules are good, it'll be even better.
That's true. I was going to say, isn't it funny how so far they make out that crossing the Rubicon is super dangerous, but we've had 100% success rate in all special characters that are crossing. I would sort of love it. And this is a ballsy move that, obviously Games Workshop wouldn't do. But if, they go, oh, we're going to do a bunch of new Blood Angel characters. And Dante, he crossed the Primaris Rubicon and died. So he's out of the game now. And you've got this new guy taking his spot instead.
I'd love it. I would love it. They do need to kill off some established characters.
I think it's good to do from time to time. Relegate those people to legends and introduce new characters, just because it's like the concept of like plot armor in stories. It's like if everyone's going to be alive, it sort of diminishes the stakes of the game. You do want the bad guys to win, you do want some of the good guys to die, and the whole concept of the warp. When you're playing games, it's like you can still have rules for characters that are dead. Isn't like Captain Tycho, even up until recently, had rules still, and he's been dead in the
still does have rules.
But he's been dead since the Second War of Armageddon or something.
Yep.
So it's like you can still kill him off, but just be like, he's still got rules. You can still play him if you want. You can play historical battles, but we're going to provide rules for them.
I do agree that there is just too much plot armor in 40k at the minute. We need to start seeing some of these characters drop dead in the stories and starting to go in different directions with certain things. I think Dante is probably a bridge too far, just given the fact that he's been teed up as being something quite important within the lore.
Yeah, because he's I can't remember the term, but he's the head honcho for the Imperium Nihilus, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's the warden of the North or whatever it is, but he's but I think the thing is with him is it's more to do with the fact that he was seen by Sanguinius at some point or something. Like there's some story about him basically being like a messenger or something for the golden warrior that's gonna do something important. Anyway, long story short is that there's a lot of reasons why doing that with Dante would be a mistake, but at the same time, best reason to do it, because I think it would really upset a lot of people, but I think it'd be a fantastic decision because I think it'd be great to reinvigorate that range, and in a way, isn't that a good thing that people are all really upset about it? Because then in a way kind of embodies the loss more. It kind of brings that whole
and what sums up Blood Angels more than being sad about your favorite golden child dying on you.
Exactly. So they all get the black range.
Exactly. It's a nice secular metaphor. So that Dante dies as well, then you get a brand new
they have visions of themselves on the board of directors at Games Workshop after they're swinging the axe.
Well, no, so when they have visions of Dante, it's like he's on the medical table dying from crossing the Rubicon, not some valiant death.
Or like Transformers the movie.
Yes.
Sort of gives up. Although to be fair, he had just gone toe to toe with Megatron for a decent stint of time.
Yeah, see, he could have a heroic fight, and he's about to die, and then crosses the Rubicon, but doesn't make it.
And then Rodimus Prime can take over the Blood Angels with the Matrix of Leadership and destroy Unicron. Oh, it'd be great. Anyway, let's talk about the Black Templars start collecting box or the Crusade new army set. Army set being a bit of a bold statement.
It's not as big as the Beast Snagger box or the Sisters of Battle sort of special edition box set that they did, and if I remember, both of those all had 100% new sculpts. They've sort of snuck in a Redemptor painted black and white to trick you into thinking it's a new model, but it's not. Well, actually, they're not tricking you.
Yeah.
It just said it comes across very much as a start collecting box with a codex, and when they previewed that whole really rubbish, what did I call it, like an alleyway of future dates, when they were going, this is our roadmap, but it's not really a roadmap. And they said Black Templars were coming out in October time, if I recall. And it's like, but they're not coming out in October. An army set boxes limited edition is coming out in October, and I presume December time is actually when the generic codex supplement is coming out that everyone could buy. So like, I would have loved it if in October we could have bought that army book so we could review it for the show. But neither of us are going to buy this army set. We have to wait until it gets released, whenever that may be.
I might.
Oh, might you?
I might buy it. I might, only because with the way
can't
that
help
I've
yourself.
kind of done my, well, no, because I've done my generic grey Space Marine color scheme. Having a Crusader squad and just being like, today they're Black Templars isn't going to necessarily be the end of the world. But I don't know. What I'll probably do is just look for the crazy person that's bought multiple copies and try and buy the codex off of them, because that's really all I'm interested in. Is
same. As much as I love the minis, the codex would be cool to have, just because it's Black Templars.
Oh yeah. I mean, so do we know if this Crusader squad is an easy build, push fit, generic squad, or do we suspect that these are actual multi-part?
So someone more clever than I has gone through and worked out all the poses are duplicates. So if you carefully look at the legs, and it's quite amazing what they've done with it. So you've got one guy with like a gun shooting, and then another guy with a pistol and chainsword, and it's like the same legs, and they're posed in completely different directions in terms of the way they're facing. So basically all the models, I think maybe with the exception of the flamer guy, who's a weird oddity in the squad.
No, the flamer guy is the same legs as a chainsword bolt pistol guy.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe he's So either way, it's like because it's duplicates, makes me think it's kind of like a super easy build, push fit set. And obviously you've got.
Well, you never know though. I mean, it could just be that it has some generic torso options, but there is a degree of customization to it. But maybe not. Maybe it is just going to be a couple variants, and it's all going to be super limited. I mean, if it is super limited, then fair enough. It's
true. If you think about it, actually, a normal 10-man intercessor squad effectively is a 5-man sprue duplicated twice. So actually, maybe it is a full-on kit and not push fit, because actually that would make sense in terms of the numbers. I mean, it could go either way, in terms of how they're going to do it.
I mean, again, they could have done multiple loadouts to try and sort of showcase the fact that there is, to try and mask the repetition of certain things. But maybe it is that you can have every single one of your Primaris neophytes armed with a bolt gun, or maybe it is that you can have them all armed with bolt pistol chainswords. It's just that you are going to have some repetition with regards to how that comes out in the poses, much like you get with the orc. New orc box, right? Like there is limits to what you can do with that. So that could be interesting to see how that kind of happens. But I mean, look, as a squad, I think they're fantastic. I think, at the end of the day, there's just enough extra detail to these guys to really kind of get across that Black Templar aesthetic. I think Black Templars were never, innately detailed. They were just, some robes over power armor, which is obviously what is happening here, and chuck in some chains and you're pretty much off to the races. So I think this is great. The Sword Brethren with his big power sword that he's wielding in two hands, or he will be soon. One of them is kind of leading, while the other one is kind of clasping it.
Oh yeah, that almost looks like they've not posed the arm correctly, or he's doing it one-handed and shielding it with the other.
Potentially, he's coming round to it. He's about to
grab
grip
it.
it.
Yeah,
but
I have to say I do love sword
but,
brethren, like the kind of the shoulder pad colours that it's sort of got black and red trim to mark that he's a sword brethren is one of the things I really loved about the Black Templars and the lore aspect of it.
Oh yeah, and the visuals of that mini is fantastic. The only other thing actually that would indicate to me that this is a potentially easy build kit is that it has got the staple of Primaris easy build, which is the waist flaps. You know, where the belt buckle flap things. Only the Primaris easy build kits tend to have those, whereas when you build the multi-part kits, you tend to be able to have loads of weird extra gubbins that you can put where those, you know, flappy panels are on their waist. You know what I mean, Phil?
You're talking about the tabard bits at the front of their legs?
No, the bits on their hips. You know, the bits
oh,
to the left and
right, yeah,
that
extra bit of armor, yeah.
Yeah,
well, I think
which
that's
is typically only on easy builds.
Yeah, do you know I quite like those though? And
oh yeah, no, I'm not saying I dislike.
I mean,
them.
they might have lent into it because that's part of like a sort of knightly aesthetic. So they might have lent into it for the Black Templars as there's more of that going on.
Oh yeah, potentially. But again, as I say, even as far as I'm aware, even the new Assault Intercessor kit doesn't have those details on them unless they are the easy build ones. Oh no, they do. So the Assault Intercessors do also have that shielding on the side of them. So maybe who knows? It's really difficult to tell. There is no obvious answer.
No, and they don't tell us in the article either.
No. What do you reckon of the pudding bowl? The breakfast
the
cereal haircut?
neophytes. I mean, I think it's interesting that I think one of the questions about Primaris Black Templars was, how'd they deal with neophytes? Because neophytes are meant to be scouts, right? And or Space Marines in training. So hopefully we're going to see a bit more of a change in the law in terms of having them in. I think the pudding bowl haircuts is a bit Marmite. I think some people will love it, other people hate it. I don't mind it personally. It's very medieval, so is sort of suitable and helps the neophytes stand out. Although saying that, not all the neophytes have that exact haircut. I find it weirder, like seeing Space Marines with bare arms, like because that's just so unusual. For as Space Marines go,
very muscular though, aren't they? Very muscular.
Yeah, and they've got the black carapace sort of connection points in there and everything. That's yeah, they're all.
I don't mind their bowl haircuts. I think again, it's sort of very much in keeping with the visual that they're trying to establish for this type of range. So I've got no problem with that. Although I do understand why people have raised concerns about them, but I just think it's a really nice looking kit. I think again, the bits that let it down is the weird flamer doodad. I wasn't into that. I mean, again, it doesn't look nearly as offensive when it's part of a squad.
Yeah, I mean,
there are some still weird little bits about it.
He's growing on me. What's interesting is he's again one of a few times that a Primaris unit can effectively have a one-off special weapon within a squad. The only other one I can think of is the heavy intercessors with the heavy bolters, or the whatever heavy pattern of bolter you decide to take. And it feels like they're leaning more into that kind of, because they were always very specific to old school firstborn, have that flexibility. Primaris are kind of all or nothing, and everyone was equipped with the same, and I quite like that. But now they're starting to bring those kind of firstborn elements back into Primaris, which is interesting, and maybe that means we're seeing more of them in the future, because they do talk about that flamer guy at the bottom. I think they're saying you'll see more of him towards the end of the year. Yeah, the Pyro Blaster. They say, well, he's got friends and they'll be joining us towards the crusade at the end of the year. So I was wondering if that's going to be like a squad level
I would
thing.
assume so.
But I wonder is that going to be a Black Templars specific squad, or is it going to be a generic Space Marine squad that Black Templars can also have access to, and potentially, because obviously here it's a special weapon within a squad. Is that going to be a thing that everyone will get access to, like intercessors and stuff, or maybe that's
I would
a
assume so.
Black Templars specific thing?
No, I imagine we are due a series of Space Marine updates. I would guess we're going to get that Flamer squad. I would guess we'll get a new type of dreadnought. We're overdue a heavier.
Yeah, I've always
dreadnought,
wanted like because we had Redemptor's your generic one to match for standard tactical armor. Then you had the Invictus to match the Phobos pattern. So I've always said you need a Gravis style. I guess it would be like Leviathan-esque.
They're going to go mad and cover it with weapons that are just stupid, though, aren't they? They're just going to go like, here you go, have 4 multi-melters, because that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of multi-melters, and it's not previewed here in the article, but there was an Instagram post by Warhammer community of a repulsor. It was a Black Templars repulsor that had some embossed iconography on it. On the front, it had twin heavy bolters, which I think you can get. Well, I'm not entirely sure about that, because I know you can have the twin Las Talon or something else. Maybe the other.
Twin heavy bolters.
Twin heavy bolters. But on top, with the pintle mount, it was a multi-melter, which apparently is very thematic for Black Templars. So presumably, and they've not announced it here, but there will be a vehicle upgrade kit for Black Templars to allow you to do that.
Ooh. I mean, it has almost been a year since they did a Space Marine release, so that they've got to. Well, it has been a year, so they've got to do another Space Marine Codex at least in the next 6 months, I reckon.
I mean, I don't want a Space Marine Codex every year, but I'd happily take, a new round of supplements or something, because those are
Go play Bolt Action, mate. That ain't Games Workshop's way.
Horus Heresy for those long-standing rules that don't really change until they do.
Well, indeed. Time will tell. Obviously, we've got in this box set the Emperor's Champion. We've spoken about the Emperor's Champion already. I quite liked it. Phil was lukewarm to it. Have your opinions changed on the champ?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he really fits in with everyone else. I think in isolation, you could be a bit nitpicky about him. I mean, he's still good. I think it's just like radically change of direction from that kind of, what I like is the clean cut look of the Primaris. But if you're going Black Templars, that's not what they're about. Like, it's almost like you would never want regular intercessors, because you would want the tabards and stuff like that. It would be cool to see how cross-compatible all these kind of units could be, so you can spruce up some of those other units. But if I was doing Black Templars, it would just be these guys plus like Blade Guard, and like that's it. Just do Blade Guard, basically.
Well, yeah. And then lastly, obviously, there is the Marshal. So you've got your Marshal with Power Sword and Plasma Pistol. Again, having seen High Marshal Helbricht, it's difficult to get too, overly, expressive about this miniature. I think it is a very good quality sculpt. Seeing Helbricht, I say this guy looks more like a lieutenant than a captain, so to speak.
A bit harsh.
Well, look, I mean, again, just going off obviously the point of difference, but again, he's got a cape, so obviously he is of captain status. I really don't like whatever is going on with his knees, with these weird armor details.
Well, Helbricht has that as well. It's very much like, isn't it Mark II Crusader armor? It has got that kind of paneling built into it, I believe.
Well, Here's the thing, right? And obviously it's difficult, much more difficult to see that detail within Helbert, but I think it's sort of within the pose. It's weird. It's sort of in this pose. One, it's immediately obvious that it's there, and two, it just looks like it's just sort of jutting out
Yeah,
at a weird angle that doesn't really make a lot of sense the way
yeah,
it
I think
is.
with Helbrecht, so you've got that kind of skull with a star around it, covering it up on one side, and then the sword is in the way of it on the other. But it definitely's got that same kind of pattern of
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now.
armor. I don't think the champion has that. No, he's got a completely different style of leg armor where it's like all in one molded into the knee pad.
Yeah, although it's very similar in terms of the actual greaves themselves, but it's just the knee bit that's a bit different. I mean, this guy reminds me, there was a Black Templar Captain mini that was released in 3rd edition with a power axe.
Yeah, I saw someone post a thing about it because basically the poses are pretty much identical. Obviously, the weapon loadouts are all different. What I like about this one is they've really gone to detail on the whole chains being attached to the arms and stuff. I always thought that was like the weakest element with the old Black Templars upgrade sprue. Like it just always looked a bit naff, whereas here it looks pretty good.
Yeah,
I love that this guy's got a little buddy riding on his backpack. That's like clearly a skeleton, like he's just been in there rotting away. Like I would love it if someone did like a face swap to, a slightly more zombified look, so the guy's not quite as dead. And he's like,
so you're suggesting rather than a skeleton, he has some living person strapped.
Well, that's
to his
clearly
backpack.
what he does. That's clearly like,
Is that what it is?
It's got like the old gallows. He's like a little torture device walking around with some poor soul.
Imagine
some heretic.
all of the throw up that he'll get all over him while that's going on. He's just going to be covered in vomit.
Well, he's probably maybe that those. Well, one, you've got the servitors to come along and wipe your bowl head,
Wipe him off,
but
yeah.
also maybe
Yeah.
he's had like, all his internal organs like removed and replaced with tubes and stuff, so he doesn't really.
Oh yes, the old tubes.
Keep him alive, but he's not really, living at the same time.
Fine. So you just want him to be sort of running around with like a sentient head.
Yeah, I mean that kind of is what servitors are anyway, right?
Yeah, but you want it more that he feels the pain or something.
Yeah, exactly. He's like a.
I feel like that's a little bit too heretical what you're talking about.
Have you seen Penitent Engine? That's exactly what that is.
I have, but the thing is, the Penitent Engine isn't. I mean, for one, that's the Adeptus Sororitas, and also, two, that's a sort of war machine with a tortured person strapped on it.
This guy's just going about for a ride.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just the idea of like,
maybe this guy he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He was the he is a servitor. Like he's a chapter serf. He's the equivalent. Now imagine this marshal is an X-wing. This guy on the back is R2-D2
right.
fixing the backpack. Something's gone wrong.
He got trapped one day inside the thing, and he was like, "Oh no!
Yeah, let me just reroute these wires, and I'll fix you up and get you going."
Yeah.
Or he's just maybe
that's
he's whispering words of encouragement, like "You can do it. You're a good marshal. Go on."
Like the skull at the end of the treasure, the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Matey, get up off your boat, or whatever it was. Saying all of his weird little phrases as you wait in the dock at the end. Anyway, there we go. Look at that. Black Templars. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And the Codex looks great with that cover. That is something that I will aspire to own. And it's got some cards.
Have you noticed the really weird artwork on the card box? Like his tiny little arm.
Oh, he does have a tiny little arm.
It's really weirdly proportioned.
Why does he have such a tiny little arm?
Just to make it all fit within the size of the artwork. But once you see it, you can't unsee it.
No, he has a tiny little arm. Oh my goodness. He's like that guy from 300, the one that that was deformed but wants to be part of the crew.
Exactly.
Oh, someone needs to model little armed man
Make a model of that artwork. Yeah,
of little armed fella. That is ridiculous.
it is a bit mad.
How did that get through? Like, you know,
I mean, maybe that's not the final artwork, but
I've got to assume it's not. But like, I hope
you've
it
got to
is.
buy
I
the
hope
box now
little
to
art-
find it out. That's how it works.
I tell you what, they are throwing a bunch of incentives at me. The John Blanche artwork cover and Little Arm Man is some pretty compelling reasons to buy in. There we go, Black Templars. No, I'm excited for them though, man. I think, you know, again, it's going to be fun to see what those guys bring to the table. So yeah, pretty hyped for that. Let's finish up by talking about this Necromunda gang, just because you were really adamant that we should talk about it. I, for one, am personally quite excited about the idea of adding a fruit and veg store to my games of Necromunda. Not that I play Necromunda, but I like the idea of trying to create some kind of like Albert Square scenario, you know?
Yeah.
I like the idea of doing like, I could build my gang based around famous EastEnders characters.
Like, got old,
the Beals.
yeah.
That would be it. You know,
got Pat Butcher.
I can have Ian Beale as my gang leader, and then my enforcers can obviously be the Mitchell brothers, and then I can have my Juves could be Ricky and
is it Bianca?
Bianca, Dean Gaffney, who I can't remember the name of his character, but I just remember his actual name of Dean Gaffney. Had the dog Wellard, I could get the dog in there. The whole thing.
For the international audience, we're talking about a classic BBC soap.
Well, an ongoing. It's available today.
Exactly. Still available. But I think a lot of the characters you're talking about are classics that aren't.
Yeah, because I'm identifying a specific era that I was, a more frequent viewer, as it were. I haven't watched EastEnders since a while ago. Although I did once over the lockdown go back to watching it just to sort of revisit it as a sort of strange. Yeah, I was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to watch EastEnders, and I sort of watched it and was like, I don't understand. What's Danny Dyer doing running the Queen Vic? No, I'm out.
Mad.
I'm out. You know, I've not seen him since Football Factory, which is not a film I'd recommend. Anyway, so I like the idea of doing a kind of EastEnders themed setting.
The market is very cool. I think it's one of those things that when you look at the community for Necromunda, is something people like to kit bash. I've seen so many people come up with like the Minotaurum crates, not crate, the Minotaurum containers, and like kit bash them into like, make little windows and turn them into like shops and stuff. So I don't know if they've been inspired by the community. They've seen like there's a demand for this kind of living hive, and they've decided to flesh it out and do their own style. But yeah, it's really nice to see other elements of 40k being brought to life.
No, for sure. I like that aspect of it. And I also like the fact that they've revealed this series of seemingly generic gang members. This is quite cool that we're now starting to see more of the general populace that would exist in these hive cities, as opposed to just the kind of specific gangers associated to the specific houses, actually being able to start to see something of a more kind of generic appearance. I mean, these guys have definitely got more of a sort of Dread vibe to them from Dread 3D back in the day, where it's like you could imagine now where you could do some kind of scenarios where you could have an Arbites or RBTs or whatever they're called, a under hive police officer, or maybe one of the enforcers in a kind of scenario where they're fighting against this great unwashed gang of assorted people, as opposed to the specific houses and what have you. So I'm really excited to see that for sure. That's a really good addition, although these guys themselves are part of a gang of sorts.
Well, I think you can use them to kind of create different kind of gangs. So these are like the outcasts, but what they've talked about is you get the book of the outcast, and that unlocks a lot of the dramatis persona, which are like the named characters from all the other releases that they've done. So there's a bunch of them, but they don't often get used, it seems. But with that, you can basically take one of those and make it your leader. So you can create loads of different themes for your your gangs, by taking one of these special characters and theming it around them. Yeah, and it's weird because we were talking about this on the last episode. We were saying we want Necromunda that is just a bit more back to basics. They're not like fancy high tech weapons, which is what you now get with the houses. They are much more technology based. This is sort of back to basics, exactly what we wanted: chainsaws, auto pistols, and auto guns. It's like that our wishes have come true, which is quite a weird.
I should have used my powers for something better than this.
Well, it's funny. It feels like we're on a bit of a roll, because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about orc hybrids, which are gene stealer orcs. And then in this White Dwarf, which is the one we're talking about, there's a conversion guide for making orc hybrids out of the new orc commando kit. Because I believe, and it doesn't fully explain it, but there's a reference to them in the latest or upcoming Warzone. So I mean, I doubt they get rules or anything like that. I presume it's going to be a passing mention, but that's something they've wanted to bring in from into this White Dwarf. A weird coincidence that we've talked about both of those things very recently, and then they've happened. We've manifested it by talking about it.
Well, there you go. I wonder what else we've predicted in our ongoing ramblings that will come true in the future. Maybe my dreadnought covered in melter guns.
Well, exactly. It may well do.
I hope that doesn't come true, to be fair, because that sounds bloody mental.
What I like about so just going back to the actual mini is like there's definitely some aesthetics from the Gene Stealer cults, like that kind of ribbing on the armors for the like knee pads and shins and chest plates and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that is more of an Imperium.
Oh no, exactly. But that's what I mean. I like that they've kind of followed it through, and you've got some almost like old style flak armor in places as well. And some of the chest pieces have a bit of a vibe of the Minotaurs priests, like the newer ones that they've been doing. With that kind of starts in the center of their chest and goes up to their torsos. So I like that there's lots of little nods to other things in the wider 40k. I mean, these would make great cultists, wouldn't they, for 40k?
Yeah, it's just nice to get some. Again, the problem is with Necromunda is the scale kind of complicates its functionality in terms of incorporating this stuff into more of the 40k aesthetic, because if anyone's ever tried to use Necromunda minis and port them across into 40k, you very quickly appreciate that the scale is really
the models
incompatible.
Are a fair bit bigger, aren't they?
Yeah, which is a shame, because I would have loved. I mean, that is one of the things, credit where credit's due, to GW with the new plastic Krieg, is they've definitely maintained a certain scale for the Astra Militarum.
Yeah, they've kept it in line with the Cadians pretty much. They're similar in height to the resin Krieg, but they've just gotten wider to make them a bit chunkier. Yeah, which is a thing.
Indeed, but that isn't obviously something that we're seeing with these Necromunda sculpts, which again is frustrating, because you would like to kind of have them as little flavoursome little additions that you could add to some of the stuff you might want to explore with 40k. But within Necromunda, it's really cool. So no, good on them. I love it. I think again, Necromunda is fast becoming one of those games that is becoming even more difficult to ignore. I think they're doing some absolutely incredible stuff with it. Blood Bowl as well. I think Blood Bowl and Necromunda are both looking stupendous.
Well, so earlier you were just having a go at the Khorne team and saying you didn't like it.
No, I don't like them, but I like a lot of what Blood Bowl's doing, just not them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I like the stuff that you don't like, seemingly.
I mean,
the werewolves and the little sheets and things, and I quite like the new orc team. To be fair, I think they've done quite a good job with.
I really like the Snotlings, and the pump wagon. Oh, that's really cool.
Snotlings are tremendous. I think they've done an absolutely stellar job with those. I think the Lizardman team
Yeah,
is
really like
tremendous.
them.
I think that was a really, really good one. And then the other one that I thought was pretty decent was the Dark Elf ones. Yeah, the Dark Elves.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
what they are. I thought those actually came together pretty well. Yeah, I thought those are pretty decent. Again, it's weird because I've still in Blood Bowl. I've still just got my old human team, and that's what I'm sort of sticking with. But because again, I just don't play Blood Bowl enough to invest in more teams for it. But I am tempted by the Lizard Men and the necromantic horror team is what they're called.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
looked them up.
Lizardmen were always one of my fun to play. They're always because they're really tanky, but you've got those little skinks which give me my little halfling vibe running around with their stunty wall.
Yeah, there's some good stuff going on there. But there you go. That's our thoughts and feelings on those various Gen Con bits. We hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to now move on to this next bit of the show, which is most likely the bit that we would consider the end. But let's find out. Transitional noise. Woo! Wow. All right, and Phil, that's the end of the show, although potentially not, because we've got a few other little odds and sods that we want to talk about, right, Philip?
Yeah, I'm sure we do.
Indeed. LGT this weekend, brother. LGT. The biggest gaming event in all their Britons. So that's going to be exciting. You're doing the doubles. I'm doing the singles. I'm going to be representing for the good people of Lookout Sir in the solo contest, and you and Richie will be representing for us collectively. You've seen your competition. How are you feeling?
Oh, well, it's interesting. So I think I said in the intro, there's like 42 teams so far. I mean, potentially there could be more that just haven't registered in BCP for whatever reason. Some of the lists are, kind of standard. It was advertised as a kind of casual game, don't bring any try-hard lists. There are some very try-hard lists there. I think one of them was 1,000 points of Deathwing Terminators for one army, one player, and another one was a bunch of Sanguinary Guard plus Vanguard veterans with jump axe, Storm Shield, and Lightning Claw. Yeah, that was a very competitive list indeed. There's quite a few sort of along those lines, a lot of Terminators in a couple of people's lists. I mean, Richie, as far as I'm aware, he's bringing 5 Dreadnoughts, so it's not like he's taking... I mean, it's not to say it's not casual. I think it's sort of making up for the lack of punch from my side of the army. So I think it sort of balances out overall, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of like really normal lists in there as well. So I think overall, I think it should be a fun time as long as we don't get paired up with one of those super try-hard teams.
Well, even if you do, though, mate, and it's an interesting stigmatism, isn't it? Stigma, whatever. The point is it's an interesting situation because at the end of the day, those kind of casual events always amuse me because even though there is a certainly more casual vibe to them, the aspiration is still to win your games and win the event, right? Like, not everyone goes into it with that expectation, but I think it's weird sometimes with the more casual community how they view the gameplay experience of Warhammer 40,000 within a kind of, matched play setting, a tournament setting, because it does become interesting how the community kind of can become frustrated and voice criticism towards people who bring army lists that have clear advantages or are more well equipped to potentially win. And in a way, that's one of the reasons why I still enjoy and one of the reasons why I still kind of endorse tournament play, because you expect when you go to, try hard tournaments to play tough opponents. Because, I'm lucky because I've got a lot of friends who I have known for many years that I play 40k with. And as a result, we've sort of transcended those weird, sort of grumbly conversations that I used to have as a younger man down the gaming club when people would be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're bringing that," or "Oh, that's broken, that's ridiculous." And that in
Really?
itself,
I feel like I have this conversation with you all the time, especially in 8th edition. It's like, "Oh, Dan, and your 10 flyers for Eldar.
I never played you with 10 flyers in fun games.
Like what, 8?
Yeah, 6 or so. 6.
Yeah, just 6. Yeah.
Well,
Casual.
you're confusing occasions here. You're talking about those rare instances where you and I travelled up to a event the day before, and you ended up having to do some play testing against me, which was just literally me rolling dice as everything in your army died. But
Yeah, we've done quite a few of those at your house as well.
no,
Yeah, we have.
I feel like there was always a tournament vibe around those, though.
Well, I think this is a problem. Quite often when we meet up to play, or in the past, there was always a tournament upcoming that we would be like, oh, well, let's, test out our lists. And I would get smashed, and it'd be a very quick game.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing. We've had... It's weird, actually, Phil. Now, this is going to be a terrifying statistic that I'm going to throw you away, but I don't think you and I have played a game of 40k against each other in over a year.
Well, I think we played a game around about this time last year.
I think it was like August, July last year, mate.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because I think it was like sort of prep for. Actually, it was actually we did it around the launch of 9th edition because we were playing the game.
Yep.
So we did that in Oxford, and then I think I played Joe a bit later on, which was testing out my no retreat list, which you came along to. So I think even though I didn't play you were there.
Yes, that is true. That happened.
I think that was like the last time.
That's unbelievable, mate. That is ridiculous. How is it that has become a thing?
That's just the way of life now. Well, I mean, not anymore, but was for a while.
You need to come down sometime. We need to sling some cubes, mate.
What exactly? I think once. So LGT double this weekend. Next weekend after that, I'm doing no retreat in Gibraltar. But once that's done, I'm like I say a free agent. We've still got the RFW sort of narrative event in November. So I need some time to paint up 2 Contemptors. But I'm sure I can spare a weekend or a day on a weekend to come up and play either 40k or Kill Team or a bit of both.
I hope so, Phil. Maybe we could experiment with recording the podcast in real life with each other.
Madness, but I'm sure we could give it a go.
You never know. It might add something to the overall, effect of the thing. I don't know.
I'm like, stop touching me. Stop touching me.
Well, that'll be about the extent of it, when just a lot more fingers. That's exactly the way that would go. What was I going to say? But so the LGT wise, I think that's the thing that's interesting to me is like how competitive play is and how people kind of view that experience and what they expect to get out of it, because I think that's the thing. At least in the competitive scene, you just expect that every single opponent that you're going to come up against has got some sort of bent list, so you just sort of go, okay, cool.
I think in a way it's like trying to do a narrative event or a game where you say don't bring competitive. You'll always get people that bring competitive lists, but also competitive list is subjective, so you'll always get someone thinking something else is more competitive.
Oh yeah, because it's a bad matchup for them specifically or whatever, and it's like, but that doesn't mean it's actually competitive. It just means that I beat you.
Yeah, and it's like, so my no retreat list to me was super narrative and not particularly. It was okay. I mean, I won a couple of matches, but it wasn't outright strong or anything. And it was like all tanks, all vehicles predominantly. But some people could rock up against that and go, "Oh, I don't have that much anti-tank." Like, oh no, it's that's a filthy list. It's like, it's really not. Like, you can kill vehicles super easy at the moment. Unless you're me, of course, I always struggle. It's a hard one to balance because someone's always gonna bring a tough list.
Yeah.
Whereas when you when you go to a competitive event and you don't bring a tough list, that's kind of on you. Whereas going to a friendlier event, it's on someone else to kind of ruin it for you, if that makes sense. Like the onus is on them, not you. Whereas a competitive event it's on you if you don't bring a competitive list yourself. And normally I'm happy to do that, like, because I can't build and paint at the speed of Joe, for example, to have a competitive army for the duration it's actually competitive.
Yeah. I mean, that was an interesting thing, wasn't it, with the RFW event, because Richie has obviously already, shown off the sort of army that he's aspiring to bring, and it's very dreadnought heavy. And I would argue that, a dreadnought heavy list, though, objectively powerful in certain scenarios, is not especially broken within the confines of what you might imagine from competitive play. But I remember there was a little bit of a hubbub on the RFW thing, because someone was like, "Oh, I thought this was supposed to be a fun event, and you're bringing all these dreadnoughts." And to a certain extent, I can sympathize with that perspective, but in others, I'm a bit like, "Well, yeah, but it is a cool themed army, and it doesn't feel too ridiculous to me." But then again, I'm not really at that point anymore where I get kind of worked up about that stuff anyway. But I think that's the thing. It's just again, it's an interesting kind of situation. But don't you worry, Phil. None of us should have any concerns when it comes to the singles side of things. Every single one of those 800 something army lists competing in the singles is, most
Nasty.
likely going to be nasty.
Have you had a look through? Have you had a browse through the competition?
It's an utterly pointless endeavor. I looked at other armies in my category. So I looked at other Imperium armies, i.e. mixed Imperium. And, they follow similar threads. I think a lot of people have kind of done similar stuff. It's a mix of knights and guard, or custodies and guard, or admech and knights is relatively consistent. I'm not super unique, but fairly unique in so much as I'm taking 3 different, or technically 4 different Imperium factions. I've got Assassin, Norum, Mechanicus, Custodes, and Knights. So
did you not want to throw in an Inquisitor in there as well?
I was tempted to, but I just couldn't quite make it work. Plus, also, the problem with adding the Inquisitor is that it disables me from being able to take the all-important secondary of a Bore the Witch. And a Bore the Witch is crazy important in those instances where you are able to take advantage of it. So I just couldn't allow myself to not have that as an option. Because when you're up against those Thousand Suns or those Grey Knight players, not having a Bore the Witch is such a massive loss. More so than having any potential Psyker could have been. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some really fun, quirky things I can do with an Inquisitor, but none of which would compensate for the loss of 15 victory points.
Yeah.
So that was a consideration. But yeah, so I've gone for the Forge World of Lucius, because, as everyone knows, Lucius is pretty good in Forge World standings. They essentially add 3 to the range of my rad weapons, and also when being shot by or hit by damage 1 weapons, I get +1 to my save. So that's pretty tidy. So I'm pretty happy with that. I also gain access to some specific stratagems around being able to deep strike and do stuff like that. But yeah, that's that. And then I've got a Tech Priest Manipulus leading that. And then I've got a Kaladas Assassin. And then for the Custodes, it's a Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jet Bike. So I've got Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jet Bike. I've got 3 Custody Guards with spears, and then I've got the Contemptor Galatus, which is the sword and shield Contemptor. And then for the Knights, I've got an Armiger Helvrin, a Knight Castellan or Castellan, and a Knight Gallant. And that is 30 models. I have increased my model count by 3, and all of it comes via 1 unit of Scutari.
Wow.
So,
feels like a lot, especially because you got 3 knights plus everything else.
Yeah, so that's the thing. 30 models, 21 of which coming from the Mechanicus, but yeah, it's got a lot of really interesting options to it, and it's got some fun little gimmicks in it that can definitely do some interesting work. I'm not overly confident in terms of CP management. I think my CP is going to be very, very difficult to have an abundance of. I think I am going to have to go quite heavy turn 1, but that's why I've prioritized the Calidus, because I think the Calidus is a good equalizer, because there's a chance that I can punish my opponent and cost them an extra couple CP in the opening turn, which effectively means that I can keep that CP race a little bit more closely fought. And additionally, the Calidus is far more likely to kill a warlord than the Caluxus. So if the Calidus can get in and kill a warlord, I can regen CP using the assassin stratagems. And I've also taken the command upgrade on my Custodes Shield Captain to regen CP on a 5+. So I think I should be all right with controlling the relatively small amount of CP that I have access to. But it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be one of those things that I honestly hope that I am able to win 3 games, but I'm just more interested in the games themselves. I'm there to have fun. I want to enjoy it. I don't really care. And my goal is still to do my games super quick. Adding the Scutari unit to the game or to my army will definitely elongate my turns by about 2 or 3 minutes a turn. So now I'll probably struggle to get my entire 5 rounds in under 40 minutes, but it is still my aspiration to do it in around 40 minutes each game, because I just can't be bothered with spending the whole 2.5, 3 hours each game, because it's just going to be too relentless. Obviously, for my opponent, do whatever you want with your hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half, whatever it is you're allocated. I have no problem with you using all of the time allocated to you. But for me, I just want to get it done my side as quickly as possible, so as I can save myself that half an hour to chill out and get my thoughts straight between games,
Yeah, I just remembered, I think even at the doubles, we were meant to be using chess clocks.
Yes.
I need to download an app for that.
Yeah, I do actually own a chess clock. I bought one while going a bit try hard during 7th. I've never used it, or at least not used that one. I've used chess clocks, obviously, because certain people have, insisted upon using them on occasion. So, yeah, I'm not particularly worried about it. I mean, again, the chess clock is only a disadvantage to my opponent. It doesn't impact me in any meaningful way. So,
fair enough.
It's all good.
For the doubles event, I'm going to be rocking Lookout Sir t-shirt, because I ordered myself one of each. I think I'm going to do the Inner Crow's Manor, because that is by far my favourite one. So,
and it is the least, Lookout Sir branded, I suppose.
It's nice and subtle, so those that know will know. So yeah, if you see a beardy man with a Inner Crow's Manor t-shirt on Friday, it'll probably be me.
Well, exactly. Although at this point they will have been listening to this in the future.
Yeah, the day after.
The day after. So it won't, this little advice that you're offering them is of no significance.
I might have to do like a social post when I'm donning it, going, look at me and Quizmaster Richie, maybe. And then you can do one or send it to me and I'll put it up on, or do it yourself. Is the other option.
I'm letting the side down by not sporting the Lookout Sir merch, aren't I?
You need to get hold of it. I was pleasantly surprised. Really good quality stuff. The t-shirt's really nice. I like them, and print is like fantastic, actually.
Awesome.
Not to shill our own products, but they're out there if people want them.
I mean, that is very much what we're here to do, Phil. So don't be ashamed of shilling our own stuff. But no, credit where credit's due to Lee. He does do quality work to his credit. So no, I'm glad that you're happy with the quality, mate. Because I know you have high expectations when it comes to that sort of stuff. So it's good to know
exacting standards. Yeah,
exactly. I'm glad that he's doing justice to your work. And then obviously, in addition to that, we've had a few extra patrons join in over the last couple of weeks, which has been amazing. Again, there's a big part of me that feels quite guilty about the whole patron thing, not least because of the fact that we're not really the most, rewarding patron to support. And, I want to take that moment to just sort of say, or take this moment to just sort of say that again, despite the fact that we are by design being relatively, sensitive about how much we promote and talk about patron, please don't for a moment think that we don't massively appreciate every one of you who have chosen to support us every month. It means so much to us that you guys obviously like what we do to the extent that you're willing to support us. And I think moving forwards, I don't intend to aggressively promote Patreon on the pod any more than what I'm doing right now, but I do think we do need to try and take some steps to do a little something for the patrons moving forwards, because I think there must be something we can contribute on a more regular basis to give them a little extra or something to make it a little bit more worthwhile, because it does feel a bit ridiculous that we're just like, yeah, give us your money and we'll support the show and we love you and appreciate you, but that's it. Bye.
Yeah, well, I mean, so far when we do community questions, and we've not done one for a couple of weeks now because of the topics in question, but when we do, we always give them sort of a priority. I do quite like the idea of maybe like, naming people that have just recently joined as like a little shout out at the end of an episode. For like new people, so do it as like a one-off. So it's a nice special thing rather than doing it every single week would maybe be a bit much, I think.
Yeah, again, I think that's the thing. I'm always sensitive to the fact that I want to make sure that we're not pushing it too hard or being too intrusive to those that just want to listen to the pod and not have us, shilling to them non-stop. And that's really important to me, because I want, I really, really, above all else, really value the authenticity of the podcast, and that's why it's taken us so long to get to this point that we even considered offering Patreon opportunities. But the point is that, yeah, for everyone who is supporting us on Patreon, we do really appreciate it. And for those of you who are listening to us now and have no interest in supporting us on Patreon, we appreciate that also. I think, listening is enough, but yeah, if you can, please consider, and maybe we will look at options to make that a bit more of incentive. Maybe we could offer discounts on merchandise, because that's relatively easy to do, or maybe we could offer some exclusive merchandise to those that support for a period of time. I'm just spitballing now, Phil. We're sort of doing the shop talk at the end of the show.
There's all sorts. Well, let's change subject to something else, because I have a weird gripe to talk about.
Okay.
And I discovered this week. So I got a new pot of technical Stirland mud for my bases. Yes. Now, apparently, this one is in the new Citadel colour pot. I believe it has changed a while ago, but I have a backlog of textured Stirland mud when it was the old school like pots. Finally ran out of them. I use them for my basing, for my Krieg, for my Minotaurs, because I want a consistent style base. So I ran out. My dearly beloved partner, she went out to the local Games Workshop store. I want to say Sunday, that was it, and bought me some. And it's a completely different consistency to the old stuff. Now, apparently there's Stirland mud and Stirland Battlemire. And I believe Battlemire is more like the old Stirland mud, which is a lot thicker, because you used to have to get like the spatula, like scoop it out and spot it on. Like the new Stirland mud is so thin you can like paint it on, but it dries really smooth. It's got not like so smooth. There is like grains in it, but it's not lumpy like you kind of want and how the old one is. So I'm like three-quarters of the way through my Minotaur, my 3 squads of intercessors, and all of a sudden I've got this other textured mud and it doesn't dry the same. So I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Like, I don't really have the time to wait another day, because Sunday is like a whole day of hobbying. Yeah, I was like, I don't have the time to go back to town or in place of my partner going because she's already been. And I don't really have the time to. Yeah, I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up getting a pot, putting a bunch of it out into like a little tin pot, and basically I had a load of sand that I just filled it in and mixed it all together to actually make it lumpy. So I'd already on all the bases used the old the new Sterling mud in a thin coat to see how it would dry, and discovered it wasn't lumpy enough. So then on top of that, applied a mixture of the new mud with sand, and I got a decent texture that actually, when you look at the two, is about right, about the same. But yeah, weird. Like, I'm a bit like, why didn't they keep the name Sterling Mud consistent with the new product that is the same? It should, like, the product should match the name. So the lumpy stuff should be Sterling Mud and the thin stuff should be Sterling Battlemire. And maybe other people had this problem 2 years ago when they made the change or whenever it was, but it's something I've only discovered now and found quite frustrating.
Yeah, I can get that, mate. Obviously, a unique situation for sure, but it is frustrating when you find yourself, doing a project and you having bought products based on a specific period in time and then having to adjust to the changes. I found that with basing sand and stuff like that. Like, I was using a specific type,
different like grain and stuff.
Yeah, and then you sort of like, I got to now rebase everything to kind of fit in with this or whatever. But yeah, you just kind of, I don't know. It's always the way with modeling materials, because they slightly change the formula or update it, or they realize that, oh wait, no, we can't use this material anymore because this country in Europe or anywhere else in the world for that matter won't allow us to export with these materials because we need to sell on a global basis. And now all of a sudden, we're having to use different materials, but it's still the same product, but we have changed the formula slightly. It's like when you bought Cocoa Pops and discovered that they're reduced sugar, and it's like, oh god, Cocoa Pops without all the sugar are just awful. It's just like sort of weird Rice Krispies. It just doesn't work. You gotta have. I get it that Cocoa Pops shouldn't have as much sugar in as they do because it's really bad for people.
But that's what you want.
But that's what you want, right? That's still what the Cocoa Pop is, right? You don't need, it's like at the end of the day, you have to acknowledge and understand that Cocoa Pops aren't good for you, but you obviously at the same time need to appreciate that when that's what you want, it's what you want, and you don't want people changing this stuff on you unannounced. Gosh darn sugar tax. Anyway, there we go. I reckon that'll wrap it up, mate. It's been a pleasure as always. Next week, I guess we're going to have to do a retrospective on the old Aeldari and talk about your progress leading up to the upcoming No Retreat. So yeah, be a bit of a very irregular segment for us. We haven't done this. We have not done an event summary segment since February 2020. Where we talked about the Grand Tournament finals at Warhammer World. Yeah,
that was some time ago.
We might have done a Beachhead Brawl summary as well, potentially.
Yes,
we did a video montage.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Possibly.
Whatever the case,
we should try and endeavour to take photos and put them up on. I'll no doubt try and take some, and they'll be up on my Instagram. But we'll try and consolidate them and put them on the Lookout Sir Instagram.
Yes.
But obviously, our own Instagram details are on the details of the podcast. If you do want to follow us individually as well.
I've been rubbish on Instagram lately. I've hardly posted anything. I do need to do a better job. I promise I will cover it in LGT related imagery. It'll be a lovely time. But until then, I reckon that's us done. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Huge thank you to our patrons again. Thank you to those who have bought and supported our merch offerings. And obviously, thank you to you for just listening in the general sense. It's been a delight. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.